I'm gonna call the recess meeting to order, and we'll have invocation by Commissioner Wells.
Our Father, this is the day that you have made, and let us rejoice. Just be with us as we go through the budget, Lord. May we realize there's more people involved than us, and God, that we need to do what's right for the people, but God, we need to do what's right for the employees. Just be with each one of us, Lord, and may we stop sometime and think before we speak. But whatever we do, Lord, we'll do it because we think is right. Be with us now, keep us close to you. In your blessed name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Now we're ready for budget discussion, and I'll start with County Manager Leland.
Did I, Mr. Chairman, ask a question before we start?
Yeah.
I want to see if anybody in this room wrote this speak up in the telegram this morning that
I
said
saw it.
Nash County government is going to have to learn how to do more with less or do the same with less. The key word is less because there is less money. No one wants to admit it, but the deck was reshuffled in 2008. This is the new norm, the new reality. The property values are not what they were. You just have to deal with it, make adjustments, make cuts, but most importantly, you have to be grown up. Did anybody in this room call that in?
I
By
read
chance.
it. I read it this morning.
Yeah, who did that?
I don't know.
Was that speak up?
That's speak up. Did you do it, Mr. Manager?
Are you kidding?
I know if anybody in this room did it, that's all I want to know.
Anybody here?
Yeah, I have-
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a problem with people
Nobody
writing
would
things,
get
won't
to
put
it.
their
Nobody
name
would
at it.
I will specifically
I do it,
deny
I put my
it.
name at it.
You didn't do it?
I did not do it. I would deny it as well, but I thought it was timely. It was in the paper this morning. Thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman.
you were a meeting.
It was
What's
probably
that?
from Mike
And you were-
Armstrong, because I
and
got
you were
something about
Yeah,
like that. from him.
evidently knew we were meeting, exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, when I get back home and read it, I'll then say whether I agree or disagree.
Okay, all right.
Let us read it, look at it.
No comments back at this point. Okay,
Okay. I'm gonna speak up a little bit here.
Speak out.
Speak out, is that what it's called? Speak out? Yeah. Well, I've been impressed that the Telegram has,
do a program, I did it for 8 years. Speak Out. Radio program, 15 minutes. Every
Oh,
week.
don't let me get that long. In 5 minutes,
I
he
think
say
don't, I
too
think
much
don't
in
have
5
to sign a
minutes.
name to it.
well, the
If
Telegram's
they're
got
shamed,
better
should
about,
be.
the unsigned comments, that you don't see those as much, but that speak out thing's still there. Well, I had I'll speak out. When I was in high school, I had a newspaper column called Lamb's Chops. So I used to have a similar thing as Lamb's Chops. Yeah, we, at the last budget meeting, we presented, first of all, I want to thank the staff, Donna, Melanie, Rosemary, all the department heads. I thought the process, for the most part, was good. We, at the last meeting, presented a budget that I thought was a good conservative budget. We'd cut about $500,000 from the request. And then we had isolated the expansion items for y'all. We had incorporated a few expansion items that were recommended. We have now taken the bulk of those out for your consideration as expansion rather than base budget. Most notably the COLA. I know there's been some talk about us going through the base budget. Staff did do a base budget analysis with each department, line item by line item, and I know there's some interest in perhaps doing that with some or all departments. I really believe, though, before you do that, and y'all can do it in any way you want, of course, but that you really look at the expansion items. They're the ones where the hardest decisions are gonna have to be made. We've got $3.5 million, probably over $4 million in expansion requests for your consideration. And that's where the big dollars are in crafting an overall budget. Again, I believe the budget that we presented, with the fund balance appropriated being similar to what it was this year, was workable. I understand there's some concern about where we're going to be a year from now with the revow, and I know there was an article in the paper about our last meeting, and it was a comment that several of y'all wanted to make sure that the manager knew that revenue neutral was not an option. And I just want to clarify that I've never suggested revenue neutral. I haven't requested a tax increase for 15 years. Revenue neutral, last time y'all had a 70-cent tax rate, and revenue neutral, because you had an increase in overall values in the county, went to 63 or 64 cents, and y'all chose to go to 67 cents. What that was a tax rate cut, but a tax increase. And the benefit of that was you haven't had the pressures on you for the last 7 years to do an increase along the way. You build in a 3-cent increase, and that is the typical way counties have done it, cities have done it for years and years and years. That's why the General Assembly passed a law a few years ago requiring that counties and cities publish what their revenue neutral amount was, so that the public knows when you reduce the tax rate, but you're really increasing taxes, that they're informed and games aren't being played. Well, we're in a new era where throughout the state, except maybe in some large metropolitan areas, counties with their 8-year revow are seeing a decrease in their values. And as a result, in order to go revenue neutral, you have to increase your tax rate. And if you do that, then in our instance, we're estimating our 67-cent tax rate would go to 72 or 73 cent to be revenue neutral. So under the old theory, a manager might recommend a 74, 75 cent tax rate to build in for the following years some additional revenue using the old model that was very prevalent in government. I have never suggested that we do that. What I have suggested is that if revenue neutral is 72 cents, then you look at a 71 or a 70-cent tax rate. If it's 73, 74 cent, you go less than revenue neutral. And if you do that, if you increase the tax rate when you have a declining tax base, and you go less than revenue neutral, you're increasing the tax rate, but in the aggregate, you're cutting taxes. If one person owned all the property in the county, all 51,000 parcels, if you, after a 10% reduction in tax value, if revenue neutral was 73 cents and you went to 72 cents, his tax bill would be less than it is this year. and I know one or more commissioners have suggested we stay at 67, and I just hope that if the taxes go down 10 to 12 or 15%, that you keep an open mind to keep a 67-cent tax rate with a 10% reduction in values in this county is the equivalent of this year cutting the tax rate to 61 or 62 cents.
See, just question here. So does this points to 72, 73 cent revenue neutral, does that reflect an expected 10% revenue reduction or
10%.
$4 million? Is that,
Yes.
I'm just trying to put
That's
this in
right.
perspective with the dollars and the percent.
The 72, 73 is at the 10%, 11% reduction in value.
So if it were 5% rather than 10, it would be 2 million revenue reduction.
If you kept the same 67 cent
Right.
tax
I
rate.
understand.
Revenue neutral, if you only have a 5% reduction in values, and some people are saying things are looking better. I hope the sales do reflect that. We want that loss in tax value to be as
But this
little as
reflects
possible.
10%,
10%.
4 million.
Yeah, my example
Okay.
reflects
That's
4
what I wanted to
million
know.
or 10% reduction. If it's 5%, you're talking 2 million reduction at a 67-cent tax rate, and you're talking a 70-cent revenue neutral, plus or minus.
Okay.
But as I was saying, if we have a 10% reduction and we keep the rate at 67 cents, that's the equivalent of this year cutting the tax rate from 67 cents to 61 cents. And so I just wanted to clarify, I do not support going to revenue neutral, never have advocated that. I understand that. I just believe that that if the values drop as much as we fear they may, that to not raise the rate any at all would have serious consequences on our ability to provide the services that the county is providing. Also, just want to defend county government. At the national level, people seem to demonize government, and at the county level, I would say county government is the government closest to the people. We provide services for the common good, provide services for the people that individually can't provide for themselves. We provide funds for education, law enforcement, emergency services, including EMS, fire protection, public health, services for children, the poor, the elderly, the disabled, veterans, agriculture. At the federal level, they're spending $1 for every 69 cents they raise. At the county level, we're collecting more than $1 for every dollar we raise. We're collecting maybe $1.01 for every dollar we spend. So county government cannot be compared to the federal government. County government, I believe, provides the least discretionary services of any level of government. We have very few discretionary items in our budget. Commissioners have made a decision they want to have recreation because the people want recreation out in the county, and so people want public safety. They want the sheriff to be able to investigate their concerns when there's crime. People want their children educated. So But one thing about county government is it is very labor intensive. It requires human capital. Computers cannot provide 90% of what local government provides. Can't provide law enforcement, can't provide EMTs. They supplement the human capital. Computers can, but they cannot replace human capital. Social services workers, educators, computers can supplement their work, but human beings are what is required to get local government functions working for the people. Local issues require human judgment and participation. Watson, the IBM computer, cannot investigate a crime, a car wreck, provide health care, or investigate child or elder abuse. Nash County is a frugal county. For many, many years, you guys, y'all have been very, very good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. Long before I got here, y'all were working hard to build your fund balances and to minimize waste in government, and I believe y'all have done a great job over the years doing that. We have a very comfortable fund balance now. Y'all been able to transfer over $2 million over the last couple years, over $3 million really over the last couple years, and assigned it for specific projects, and at the same time still increased your fund balance. And so I believe we have a good fund balance, and I give y'all the credit for that. Finally, I want to say that I understand my role as county manager. My role is to give advice and to implement. And I fully understand some of you may or may not agree with things I've said today. And I fully understand that I don't make the decision. I don't have a vote. I don't put my name on the ballot. I don't subject myself to public scrutiny like each of you do. And as a former commissioner myself, I truly appreciate what y'all do, and the ridicule sometimes y'all receive unfairly. Sometimes things can get pretty vicious, and but I think we all want to work for the same thing, and that's to provide services to the people at the best cost. And so we're here today to try to come up with a preliminary tax plan that will be presented hopefully at the first meeting in May. I believe we can have it ready by then if we can get certain expansion items out of the way. Again, staff is open to going through the whole budget if that's what y'all want to do. If you want to go through every single line item, or if you want to take certain parts of our budget, in a continuation budget, and go see if we can make some cuts, that's fine too. But I believe the most pressing thing we have right now before us budgetarily is addressing these expansion items that are before you. So we can proceed any way the board wishes. We are at
Quick
your disposal.
question.
Yes, sir.
Could we get a spreadsheet that would show the tax rate 68, 69, 70, 1, 2, and 3 at 100, 200, 300, 400, $500,000, so we can see the implications of a tax rate at that value on that home value. In other words, if we had a rate of 68
Right.
and I had a $100,000 home, what would be the tax implication?
$680.
Okay, but I want that on a spreadsheet. I want it all
Yeah.
spread out.
For,
Up from 68 to 73, 100 to 500,000.
okay,
And then I've got it all right in front of me on one spreadsheet.
sure, we can do that.
Because I know some people that have 100, and I know some people that have 500.
Right. Well, at a set rate, it's incremental. The issue I think y'all have to address when you look at your revenue neutral or you're adjusting the tax rate is how it affects each individual parcel. Which, because say values go down 10%. If your value of your property goes down 10% or more, and you go revenue neutral, then you are getting a tax cut. If your value of your property, of your house, increases in value or decreases less than 10%, then if you go to revenue neutral, then you're actually raising the taxes on that parcel. Yeah, but we can get that for you. Sure. How would y'all like to proceed? Again, my recommendation is that we go first, discuss these expansion items. It's over $4 million now. But we can begin with the base budget, if you,
Why not look at the expansion items?
If we go through when we go through the expansion items, whenever we do, I think it would be helpful if we got it clear in our mind exactly what was recurring and what was
sure,
one-time
we'll
expense.
explain that when we go through them. Like the vehicles that we put in there for the sheriff's department. In fact, in the base budget, if you reviewed it, if you reviewed the base budget, you'll see some departments that look like they've gone down in spending. That's because the capital that was in it last year has been taken out and put in expansion. For example, the sheriff's department. This year versus last year comparison in the base budget has 300 and some $1,000 for vehicles in last year's budget, but it doesn't have it in this year's. So, yeah, when we go through the expansion items, we'll tell you whether it's truly an expansion item or whether it is a recurring high dollar capital item, like vehicles in the sheriff's department. We could have just embedded it in the base budget, but it's so much that I thought we should bring it to the
And I
commissioners.
think at our previous meeting, Robbie had asked on this sales tax thing, that this projected sales tax increase, that be shown somewhere in there as potential revenue going forward.
Yeah,
So we've got an accurate picture of, as accurate as it can be at this point, of what we've got, revenue versus expenditures.
Yeah, and we have not readdressed any revenue estimates. Our revenue estimates for next year that we have preliminarily set are based on the method that we've used in the past, not be too aggressive. For instance, this month, whereas we had been averaging about 1.2 million a month in sales tax revenues, we only got 900,000. So as far as the new revenue, and Mr. Davis and I had a discussion about that because I think there was a little confusion about the way I said it. We're hesitant to budget the new revenue anticipated by the law that passed in 15 that redistributes to 79 counties sales taxes based on new taxable items like car repairs and things like that. The reason is, we'd like to have a year's history or some kind of history. It just started March 1st, and we don't know if the fiscal analyst in Raleigh, they do it for 100 counties or for 79 counties or 100 counties because they're taking money from 100 counties and redistributing it to 79 counties. Part of our sales tax is point of sale, so it's individual to our county. Part of it, a smaller part, is per capita, which is a statewide analysis. So until we've got some history on that new revenue, I did see an estimate. We're expected to get about 500,000 in additional revenue in a 12-month period. But that is based on certain assumptions that the folks in Raleigh have made in good faith. But until you've got a history, we're hesitant to budget. We'd rather be conservative and not budget as much.
So you're gonna leave it out completely, or what? Put it in at 400, 300, or?
Well,
We did have that discussion, and I'm in agreement with the manager that we really need to get a little bit further down the road before we budget that to make sure it is going to come to fruition. Because of the way the number was determined, we just have no history of it at all. The worst thing we can do is assume the state did it right, put the money in there, and did it not show up. So we came to terms on that item, and
So there will
he's
be some
correct.
notation in there about sales tax.
Could go up, yeah, but I don't think, he's right, we don't need to use it as income until we see it as
I don't
Just be
think
income.
we can leave it completely out.
and the way
It
I
just
think we
needs to
do.
be visible.
yeah, well,
Which is what he's saying.
I
I
take,
understand the history, I agree, we do need to look at it, but there's gonna be some.
there's gonna be some.
So,
Right.
I would say, I would
Well,
totally
here's-
leave it out.
Just me. I know that we're looking, I think, at somewhere from upwards of 10%, maybe less than that. So whatever we could do this year to reduce the budget, that would take us into next year's budget, not as much under the gun if the revenue drop is actually 10%. Plus, if you keep this as a reserve item on the side, and it actually is 500,000, then that would be an upside to another significant reduction in spending, although I think there'd have to be another reduction next year. Otherwise, you're gonna have a significant increase in the tax base.
Yeah, the way I explained it last time was, I could have explained it better. What I said last time was, because we are being conservative on those increased revenues, that if they do come to fruition, then that will soften the blow of that reduced revenues when we go less than revenue neutral, or if we don't change the tax rate.
If they don't come to fruition, then being
We're gonna have to,
very careful this year would soften that blow for next year. I mean, I'd hate to come into next year and it'd be worst case 10%, if that is worst case, and we're sitting here looking at a terrible situation.
well, again, I would argue that if you went not revenue neutral, but 1 or 2 cent less than revenue neutral, that
Well,
you,
let's say you went 70 cents.
right,
You're still $2 million if it's 10%.
that's
So, I
right.
mean, I'd rather go into next year looking 500 to 1 million than go into next year looking for 2 million. That's just me.
Yeah, I understand,
So, you know,
yeah, I understand.
you can kind of do the math on that and see what's in my head.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, looking at the expansion items, especially the recurring expansion items, is an easier place to find those dollars that you're looking for to not increase than going through the base budget that we've already gone through. I don't mind going through the base budget, and sure, there's $1,000 here and $1,000 here and $5,000 here that you could find here and there, and I'd say maybe a couple $100,000 in the entire base budget.
Well,
But it's those expansion items that, as Mr. Morgan says, is it a need or a wish? There are some things in there that are a need, and there are some
well,
things
I
that
haven't
are a
looked at
wish.
this, and I know we're gonna look at it in detail, but you say $1,000 or $2,000, but just right off the top of my head, if we budget, our mental health at what we budgeted it at this year, that would be $170-some thousand. Why would we budget mental health at $350 and when this year we budgeted at $170? If it was good enough this year, why would that not be good enough next year?
That's a policy decision that y'all are gonna have to make. What we put in the budget preliminarily is the amount that y'all have historically given to mental health. We're recommending that those funds and those programs be evaluated by your committee of this board, and this board decide how to spend that money. And for the most part, we may have to transfer some to our LME, but some counties deal with that money at the local level and decide which programs, with input from their LME, and spend that money according to the programs they see. The way we've been doing it is we send all this money to East Point, say $30,000 for one program, and they spend $12,000, and they keep the other 18. We want to make sure whatever amount y'all decide, and whether that's 170.
So kind of what I'm saying then is I think it would be a worthwhile effort to look at each item and determine the actual effectiveness of that spending. For example, this is just an example.
Sure.
We put over $800,000 into the Braswell Library. I don't know what programs they have, how they're spending that money. Is that effective the way they're spending that money? Are those programs outdated? Do they need to be revised? I don't know. Is that something we should look at? Because we put over 50% of their budget in.
The only, regarding libraries, as you know.
Well, it's just an example.
Yeah, I know, and that's a
I'm
good,
not
fair.
picking on the library.
I know, that's a good, fair
In our own
example.
libraries, we put very little in, actually.
Right,
In the county.
I'm recommending some expansion on the 5 regional libraries, 5 small
But
town
everything you
libraries.
read about libraries, they're utilized less and less.
Right.
Because we're in this high-tech age, and I know some people don't have the high-tech equipment, and they go to the library, and I appreciate that, but, is all that money being spent very wisely? Or how much of it is being spent on labor and personnel versus programs that support the people that need to use the library? I don't know.
Yeah, we've got a formula that y'all have had for many years that funds that library participation, with participation from Rocky Mount and Edgecombe County. We are not recommending any increase in that. They would always love an increase, but I think they understand that they're not going to get an increase this year. They are very labor intensive as far,
But is that?
IT.
If I ask you, if I said they're more labor intensive, is that because the traffic is up? Could you tell me what the traffic is in the library today?
They can.
Okay,
We
well,
can.
I've never seen anything like that would justify this amount of spending.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on any
I know,
area,
I know.
but just look at the Gateway, for example. I mean, you talk about formulas. Wow. There's another formula where we're throwing in virtually double what anybody else is putting in. And I mean, they might argue that, well, you're getting more out of it. I don't know. I think the Edgecombe person, the Nash person, and Mr. Tolson right in the middle, I think they're equally looking at both counties and working just as hard for Edgecombe as they are in Nash, and I just don't understand why we're throwing in that much money.
Right, right. Well, any item like that, we can look at
I've
at
said
any
enough.
time.
That's just kind of
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Yeah, going back to the library briefly though, I think most of their budget goes to labor and IT. I mean, that is, IT's the wave of the future for libraries, computers, access, but they're not building a fund balance, but that doesn't mean if they had to make some hard decisions because of reduced funding, they would make those decisions. But, yeah, I mean, libraries, mental health, gateway, anything, y'all have the power and the prerogative to examine those items and adjust the funding, unless you have a binding agreement.
I would hope other agencies like public schools and the community college and other agencies that we provide funding to are looking at their programs and determining, are they adding any value to anything? Or are they just programs that have been there forever and we're just going to continue them because we've always had them?
That's the way we've always
That's the kind
done
of
it,
thing we need to be
yeah.
doing.
That's right, every year.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever told y'all, but first time I did a budget in Chowan County, my finance officer and I counted 37 times that we were told when I asked the question, why do you do it this way during the budget process? And
That's
we
the
were
way it's
told,
always been.
because that's the way we've always done it. That was the
That's
answer.
true.
And so during our budget process with departments,
But you can't do that
we asked those
unless
questions.
somebody's giving you the money to do as you've always done. I mean,
Right.
if there's some restriction on the money, I mean, in my household, I'm restricted to what my income is. I just
If
can't,
income goes down, what do you do?
I have to reduce. I mean, that's what anybody would have to do. I mean, I would have to find things where I could reduce. And I'm
That's
not
what happened.
advocating eliminating anything that we're mandated to do or required to do. I'm just simply asking that we really take a serious look at programs across the board, how we're spending money, to see if this is just something we've always done, so we're gonna
I agree.
continue to do it, or is this something that, we could change and do differently and do it smarter and spend less money?
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
You need to always be re-examining, rethinking, and
But that should be done.
reanalyzing.
With the parties involved. That should be done with the parties involved. So we may not know all the answers or have all the information necessary to decide whether this program is not effective, no longer needed, or whatever.
Well, we've talked about a lot of philosophy this morning, and granted, Mr. Lamb, I appreciate yours, and granted, I don't agree with your philosophy, but we all know that. I have to work on a business model, and I'm just of the opinion, the more we can get government to work like business works, the better off the citizens are.
I agree.
But, I mean, I don't understand why we would even have an expansion budget list. We are here today knowing revenue's going down. We're starting with a base budget that matches last year's base budget. Until we find something in that base budget that we can take out, I'm of the mindset that nothing can move off the expansion budget into the base budget, because there is no money to move it with. So, to answer your question, which one comes first, you got to see how much money you're gonna have before you decide how much money you can spend. The expansion list, if there's something on there that we've already said we were gonna do, this board's got to stick with its word. If there's something on the expansion list that's mandated, we know what mandated means. But if it doesn't fall under one of those two categories, I don't see why we need to spend time discussing it, simply because we don't have the revenue to expand the budget. We need to be cutting the budget, not expanding the budget. So I believe we've got to go back over here and find how much money we're gonna find that we can take expansion and move over there. the way we think in private sector. And I think we all know here that because of where we've been the last 8 years, our citizens are struggling, the majority of them. The ones that are not, and I feel very privileged because I don't struggle near as much as other people do, but we got a lot of citizens that struggle. We know that, I don't know what the amount of tax, Avalon tax is within a municipality in Nash County total. It's probably 65% maybe if you take all the towns. And we know that a lot of those towns are not going to do anything for their citizens. Whatever that rate goes down, they're going to keep collecting the same amount of money. Whether they're a big municipality, whether they're a small municipality, I just think that's what's going to happen. So we should feel compelled to help our citizens as much as we can, because they're going to get nailed twice if they live in a municipality. And I'm not talking about any municipality, all of them, whether it's Nashville, whether it's Bailey, whether it's Middlesex, whether it's Rocky Mount. I think all of them are going to go to a revenue neutral rate is what I would anticipate happening, if at best, quite frankly. So that makes me even more compelled to know that we've got to do as much as we can for our citizens that are already struggling. So, you know, I'm certainly going to work through it any way that the board wants to do it, but I have trouble understanding why we've even got an expansion budget.
Well, let me say this, we have taken out the COLA that was in the
I noticed
base
that when I
budget.
first got it the other day.
And we've moved that to expansion.
And I hope that would be a policy moving forward, that it would always be that way.
That's fine. And,
May I ask-
Sure.
What can Nash County people afford? Can they afford an increase or not have no increase? Because this county belongs to Nash County people, not to us 7 members on this board, you know, or any other board. This county belongs to Nash County people, and we're spending their money, so we need to look at what's good for them and not just for a segment of that.
I agree. And again, a year from now, in the aggregate, I would hope we would have a tax cut, albeit not a
Not a tremendous one.
a way that really threatens, in my opinion, services.
I agree.
Well, services.
Needs and wants are quite different.
That's right.
Services.
Always.
I'm talking about, I'm gonna say needs. What made government bigger?
We did.
Why?
That's a good question, too. If anybody
Why?
knows the answer, they go
Well,
ahead and tell.
I can tell you why.
Why?
It's because the private sector, there were needs out there that private sector weren't meeting, that people needed, and that caused government to grow. I've been following this thing here since I'm 9 years old, and I'm 80 now. And I've
Long
been
time,
looking at it every year. I started budgeting at age 9, enterprise budgeting.
You might be
Because
smarter than
I
most of them.
had an enterprise. So government grew, and when I started, government wasn't all that big. But then there became a depression, and it followed with recession. If you don't have a depression, you have no recession. So, and private enterprise weren't meeting the needs of the people. And I'm not against private enterprise. I believe in it. And so government came along and picked it up and grew. Now, if we want to reduce government, then we're going to have to depend on the private enterprise, help meeting some of these needs, and basically through jobs will help. But there are other things, education, health issues and all that. That's what caused government to grow.
Well, and also, Mr. Chairman, there are certain functions of government that the private sector can't reasonably provide.
I know that. That's true.
And what government does, I hate to be, like he said, we're doing a lot of philosophizing, but you can't, you know, government is to provide for the common good. by having a uniform system of taxation, you are eliminating the free rider who pays absolutely nothing but gets the benefits. So,
And, well, a lot of free riders are billionaires.
well, that's a tax system question. I agree. I agree.
May I ask one more question? Are we
Don't pay
going,
1 cent of taxes.
are we going on needs or wants? Now, which one are we going on?
I suggest we go on needs.
Absolutely.
And I don't disagree with that. And
We can't satisfy everyone's wants.
I agree very
We
much.
can only address the needs, and that's what government should do.
right.
Government should be the one to give them their wants or needs. Now, which one they saying? Either one. is a
Government
part
should
of it.
provide the needs.
Absolutely.
And in the judgment of their elected bodies, they can decide which wants they want to provide, such as recreation. There's nothing that says government has to provide recreation.
Absolutely.
But county commissioners, this board of commissioners, other boards of commissioners, cities, have decided they want to provide that function for their young people, their middle-aged people, and their elderly. And so
Which is more important?
the needs are always most important.
Exactly, that's my only statement. The needs are the, get your needs first and your wants later.
I agree.
Don't muck around here with other people's, my money, your money, and everybody else's money. What are the needs, actual needs, not where it's recreation or where it's hospitalization or whatever, but what the needs for the persons that's out here, not for the segment of it.
Well, we can proceed any way the board chooses.
I would suggest to get us off the stalemate we seem to have dwelled on this morning, that we take the expansion budget, we go through it and mark each item, whether it is a mandate, yes or no, whether it's something the board have previously promised, yes or no, and then if it is a one-time expenditure that will come out of fund balance, yes or no.
Okay.
That would allow us to at least know what the total is of what we've already promised, and at each one that is a item that will come out of fund balance that is a one-time, non-reoccurring expense, I don't know why this board can't decide today, do we want to take the money out of fund balance and get it done, or do we not want to do it? And then that'll leave those items that are at least on a list of additional costs that we can then go see if we can find the money to take care of the rest of it. Otherwise, I don't see how we're gonna get started this morning, but that's just my suggestion. Is that fair with everybody?
Well, that's what I said in the beginning, then let's start with these expansions.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about.
Let's don't have no expansion.
Decide whether we're gonna do them or not. I want to categorize them.
Priority.
Well, we need
Priority, not really priority,
Yeah.
just categorize them so we'll know how they're gonna get funded.
Okay, we can do that.
And some of them are gonna move because they have to move. Some of them are gonna move because this board says we want to spend fund balance to move them. And then some of them are something this board may have said previously that we gonna do, that we need to do what we said we're gonna do. And then you're gonna have a list that's left that we'll have a dollar figure on that we can fall back over here in the rest of the budget, see if we can find the money for it.
Well, are we really evaluating what we want them to do?
We will do that next, Mr. Morgan.
Okay.
Not at this process, we won't.
Okay, so
Let's do it.
y'all want to go through the expansion items? First, let me, on that first page, there's certain things,
What's the first page you talking about?
the ones that we've kept in the base budget that are truly expansion items.
Right.
We did take out the COLA and several things, but the first thing is a mandate from the state, the $70,000. They're increasing the state retirement.
We got no options.
We have no option.
They
So
said base budget is where it should be.
we put it in the base budget.
Right.
The next one is something that I feel strong about. It's only $40,000 in county funds. It's phase 2 of the salary study implementation plus the integration of DSS and the health departments. This puts everybody that's below the midpoint to where the study recommended and where our consultant for health and DSS recommended. As of July 1, if you approve this, and again, it's $86,000 total dollars, but only the bulk of that is integrating DSS and the health department. There was only like 8 or 9 employees left from those other departments that got more than a 2-step increase that we limited last year's $350,000 to.
To move us along, my remembrance of that particular item is that last year when we addressed this board decided it wanted to do the implementation of the pay study in 2 increments. We did implement 1, and then it was anticipated by the board we would do this one the next year.
Yes, sir.
I think it is a given this board has committed to this, that we should leave it there.
Thank you.
Anybody disagree with that? Mr. Outlaw?
If the needs still, are the same needs still there?
And
Billy, I think this board has already said this is what we're gonna do. And
I
I'm
can
not
get what
one,
the old board says is it's what it's supposed to be.
well, I can't verify the number, but I'm gonna assume the number's right.
and what
We
this
got 2
does,
people down there that I believe everything they tell me.
I don't believe nothing nobody tells me.
Sorry, I'm just not that way.
and
When they
what
tell me
this-
something wrong, I'll be different moving forward, but it hadn't happened yet.
not to belabor this, but what this will do is as of July 1, every employee.
All right, Daddy, you got what you wanted, let's
Okay.
move on.
Every employee, including those we've integrated from DSS and health, will be at the figures that the salary study suggested, unless you're already past the midpoint.
Gotcha.
And we've
All right,
done that. Okay, the next thing is,
I think we've already decided.
yeah, y'all
what we're
voted
gonna
on
do.
this at the last meeting to go full-time. That posting should be out any day. It's been approved, the job description. Utility expense for the gym at the Spalding Gym.
I think we've committed to that. I just hope we've made it very clear that it's temporary until we get the other building
Well,
open.
Can we refer back to this letter that was sent to the alumni members in December, this letter here? Down, it says, hold on just one second. The town of Spring Hope has recently forwarded the invoice for fuel at Spalding Center to Nash County for payment. It is our intention to pay those fuel invoices for the remainder of this fiscal year. However, the county will not be responsible for maintenance duties or any additional costs unless there is a change in this approach and it is reflected in next year's budget. So is what we're doing today changing our approach and reflecting it in
Reflected
this
in the next
budget?
year's budget. And what we're doing,
And what's going?
we're using that gym. The Recreation and Senior Center is using that gym. We're the ones using it. But
We would continue that until the center in Bailey Middlesex is up,
Yeah, and
then-
that's all we promised.
and then this would,
it's a year to year, it will be a year-to-year appropriation.
okay, I'm okay.
That's why I pointed it out, was because of that letter. We only committed through the end of June, but we're recommending so that we can continue to provide those
I
services.
just don't want to get 2 or 3 years down the road and
I
then,
agree.
and then they have no recollection of what the understanding was today.
The last thing that's in the base budget is the 300,000 increase.
That's one half of 1%.
Of 1%.
That's another item where this board
Right.
has committed to, and we got to do what we said.
We
we'd
will
do.
be meeting with them on the 25th. They may have an additional request, but
Right.
as of now, we're going with what the third year of the agreement specifies. Okay, if you go, we also, on that, the next page, you'll see some history on some basically, it's the base budget, so we can skip that for now. Just wanted to provide that to y'all. And again, whenever you see the 2017 recommended, and you compare it to prior years, this year, or prior year's actuals, it more often than not does not include capital, such as vehicles and things like that. So if you go to this page right here,
What does it say at the top of the page?
it says base budget, general fund expenditures, and then Nash County work session, April 14th, notes. Okay. Okay, these are the expansion items for your consideration. If you look at the second page, you'll see the total amount is 4.3 million. And that would be on top of the base budget that we have right now, 90,000.
90 million.
No, I'm sorry, 90,329,000. So, the first thing we have, and then on the third page after that, you'll see, I've had commissioners want to discuss this issue. Some have indicated they think 2%, some have indicated maybe 1.5%, and some have indicated uncertainty at this point. So we're open for discussion.
What I'm hoping we're doing, Mr. Manager, at this point in time, is going through and categorize them first
Okay.
prior to discussion. So,
Yes.
to me, that item is not mandated, it's not something we've agreed to, it is definitely reoccurring, so we need to mark it that way, move on, till we get through the whole list.
Okay.
Does everybody understand how we're gonna go about it?
Yes.
Are we in agreement with it, Ms. Richards?
Yeah, it's not marked out, but we'll,
Right, we're not addressing it.
okay, because I'm not okay with that yet.
Okay, well, we haven't really discussed what we're gonna
Okay.
do with it. I'm gonna mark mine as
Good.
D, discretionary.
Say that again now.
We just market it, Mr. Chairman, at this point in time, whether it's something we've already said we would do, whether it is reoccurring or not.
Whether we want to
And if it's not reoccurring, we can make the decision whether we want to pull the money out of fund balance as we go to get it done. And then we end up with a list.
It's a won't.
Sure.
It's a won't.
That would be a won't, that is
It would be a won't.
correct. That's correct.
One page, 2 pages.
But who does the wanting?
So it is D and reoccurring.
Better look at that damn stuff.
But this number actually came from the page you were on.
We're giving away, we're giving
Yeah,
away.
well, this,
Next, Ms. Manager.
Mr. Chairman,
this here is,
he was trying to figure it out.
Give us a page of whatever it is.
You go with that, Mr. Chairman? We're gonna mark that as reoccurring discretionary.
One more page over.
okay, mean that it's not,
Okay, thank you.
Right there.
it's not totally out.
I know.
No.
Well, it's not totally out.
That's what we're looking at. So we're gonna
Well,
move on to that one.
Okay.
Okay, next thing is health insurance. We have a separate fund balance for health insurance. I believe it's about 1.7 million. We've had a rough year this year. We have had the benefit of our stop-loss insurance kicking in and offsetting how bad it was as far as claims, several catastrophic cases. So to fund at the same level benefits, we believe, and as of, we're gonna meet next week with the insurance folks, but we believe this number now is less than what we would really need to actuarially keep that health fund balance what it is.
And this 4.2 means it's a 4.2% increase? That's
That we're gonna
unheard-
charge each department
Right, understand.
and send it to that
To me,
fund.
that's an unheard of low number. It's non-discretionary. We got to do it. I don't know how we had no choice with that one. We just need to check it.
Okay,
It's a must do, I think.
Okay. And of course, that money does come out of the general fund,
Understood.
but if we didn't fund it, it would come out of fund balance of that special fund.
We
But-
won't find a private, health plan that went up 4.2%.
No, and we're told ours is gonna go up a little higher than that. We're hoping to find
Something.
some money in our plan itself
Right.
and maybe even use a little bit of our reserve to offset it. But they are saying costs are going up between 7 and 9% overall, between medical and prescription drugs. So we do think that's a really low increase.
I'm gonna check it off and, yes.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how our stop loss factors into what the increase has been.
Yeah,
That would set it off some, but,
it does.
so that's, thank you. Any objection to that, we'll put that in the base budget or in the budget. Reorganization of Parks and Rec and Aging departments. Your,
Find some more just like it.
your base budget has both of those director positions still in them. So if y'all choose this, then when we go to the base budget, we can make those reductions.
Haven't we already chose it?
Well, just give me a second.
Y'all discussed it, but y'all didn't
We
vote
make a
on
motion.
We
it.
didn't vote
Going
on
Or
in.
make a motion. Yeah.
You won, right? Just reinstating one.
Right.
I move for approval if we're taking a motion.
Great.
What are you approving?
Consolidating
Yeah,
the
this-
parks and.
We're
Since
not
we-
approving anything yet.
Well,
Oh,
we're-
we're
No,
categorizing, we're categorizing.
No, actually, if, y'all can do it either way. You can either do a motion and that way we can just
Mark it off.
integrate it into the budget, or, we can come back
Do
to
you
it.
need action from this board to do it?
Yeah.
Actually,
That's what was
I can
gonna
do it,
ask-
but I'm
that's
not
what
gonna
was
do it
gonna
unless
ask
y'all
the
wanted me to.
attorney. Do we need to do that? Doesn't,
I think the manager just said he can do it, but he would like to have a
well, if he
support
asks
the
for
motion
it,
from
if
the
he asks
board.
for it, he can do it, but if, in my
I second Ms.
opinion,
Barnes' motion.
You got a motion on the
Got
floor.
a second?
motion to, state the motion, please.
To consolidate the Aging and Parks and Rec Department.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Barnes to consolidate the two departments, aging and recreation. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposers? Ayes unanimous.
And the effect of that is it does reduce our base budget by that amount, $45,973,
Yeah, the effective July 1.
July 1. Okay, now, maintenance items. The farmer's market doors, you'll see on the next page, we have put in a grant, a 50% grant with the Tobacco Trust Fund, but we can't count on that until October, November, when they award it, if they do. So the cost would be a one-time, non-reoccurring cost of $143,000.
Did we not vote already to do that?
No, we've discussed it. Y'all can actually do it this year if you want.
We actually voted in the yard at farmer's market.
Right,
But
and
that
they're
wasn't
not on the
me.
board.
It wasn't me, you're right.
We were
The
looking
vote
at
you're
it.
thinking
Yeah.
about it was unofficial.
And again, that's, any of these items, if y'all want, just like in the last 2 years in June, we've set aside $2 million and $1.5 million for future projects. If y'all want to appropriate from fund balance this year and this year's budget, we can go ahead and put these in this year's budget, or we can carry them over to next year's budget.
I think the board has agreed on the first item. I suggest we do that one and hold the rest of them until we get through working on the budget.
And I tell you, they're really looking forward to it.
Just as another item related to the farmer's market, and I've already mentioned this to Derek, the parking lot striping is really, it's very dim, you can hardly see it. So he said he was gonna try to get that done by early summer, so just mention that to you.
Okay, then that must be coming out of this year's funds that he's already got appropriated. Okay, so your suggestion is approve the farmer's market doors, but the next 8 items do not at this time.
Until we, are all of those non-reoccurring?
I would say so.
I would like to do that until we see where we're at.
Barbara upgrade now.
When we come back to that, when we get
No, no, that's a
They've had
major.
some repairs on
We'll
it.
come back to it. when we
No,
have
you
it.
Are you
just
talking about
you
the
just
farmer's market
repaired.
in this year,
And now you're
appropriate funds
talking
this
about-
year or next
Yeah.
year?
Fleet
Fund balance?
replacing it.
You just talking about the ground.
No, this would be a replacement.
Replacement.
This year or
Okay.
next year for farmer's market.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. We can do it either way.
I would say do it sooner than later.
All of these items under building maintenance, it would appear to me that they're all items that have to be done. The only one that I would take any exception to, and only because we're in the midst of a courthouse expansion, is I would ask that you consider moving that entrance awning into that expansion project and see how it fits into all that. But these other things,
Have we committed to all those?
I don't
that's
think
what we're
they're.
talking about right now.
Yeah, but I don't see them as all got to be done.
Well,
There's a lot of things there that
Why don't we
don't have
talk
to be
about
done.
them then?
Well,
Th-
Derek
These are
said,
requests from Derek's department.
Derek said some of them could wait.
Yeah.
This is what, and he's not here, and I wish he was, but he's on vacation, a legitimate vacation. I'm not criticizing him. He was out of the country at a wedding.
Well, I don't have a problem
Yeah.
waiting, as long as waiting a year doesn't increase the cost next year to what, more than what we're putting in this year. I mean, we need to look at it close enough to know what we're doing. We're not just putting something off that's gonna cost us more money down the road.
Well, the way he operates is if whatever those numbers total, starting with the boiler, say it's $550,000. In the past, y'all put that amount in his capital budget, and he doesn't do that until usually in the spring, early summer, at the end of the budget process, budget year, or if he has a complete failure that he anticipated, then he would go ahead and spend that money. So one thing y'all may want to do is when you add up, and I agree that courthouse awning can
Okay.
can be removed. But add up these amounts and give him a lump sum, or you can do a specific project, and add those numbers up and put it in his capital budget and ask that, he do those things as he needs to. Let me say this, though, the jail roof, they've done 2/3 of the jail roof, and so this is the third part of the jail. There's still a leak, and it must be from the old section of the roof. So that's why he very much wanted to do that project. The other big one there is the HVAC controls in this building and the detention center.
What I would like to do, Mr. Outlaw, is farmer's market, I think this board is informally taking action on already. All of these will come out of fund balance. One-time expenditures, I'd like to note them as that, get through the whole list, see what that whole total like that comes to, and then see what the appetite for this board is to spend fund balance. And if we got a list of $3 million and we decide we want to spend $1.5 million, let staff categorize what's most important.
Well,
Some of these things don't
let me
have
go
be
back to
done.
what I said when we started this discussion. These items, when they are brought before us, we should know what our options are. And so what was presented to us were all these items. And so if these are things that don't need to be done, or could be done differently and not create more costs down the road, then those types of, this to me then turns into a want rather than a need.
Yeah.
If you were telling me today that it's on the list, and if we had not questioned the list, then it would be done.
No, it was,
Well, if we didn't question the list, it would be done.
well, it's an expansion item, though. You're
Approved
expected
expansion
to,
item.
you're expected
Exactly.
to question it. Yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
he did when
I'd
he
really like to
presented
know
it.
what my options are when he comes in here and you tell me, for example, the roof. So, okay, you tell me, okay, I can put the roof off and patch it. Is it gonna be next year? We've had all kinds of issues with the roof, leaks, et cetera, that are now costing us more money than it would have cost us to do it this year.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't next year to not fix a roof, patch it, and then next year have to fix the roof and replace the carpet.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I mentioned the roof. I think the roof is one thing on there.
Well, I agree, these are all items that would come out of fund balance, and so I agree with that. Other than the awning, I think that should move to the courthouse project.
And Derek's job is to tell us, is to make recommendations. That doesn't mean the boiler is gonna, he knows it's gonna fail in the next 12 months. He thinks it's at the end of its life, and therefore, but that's the kind of thing that, y'all have a nice fund balance. So if you take it out of the budget and it does fail, the problem is if it fails, we're gonna have an issue for several weeks. And he's just trying to anticipate a replacement of something.
When the state comes in and
So
we've agreed on the farmer's market door.
No, you need to do a budget
Well,
amendment. That's my answer.
Why don't we just
May.
agree on all of them except the courthouse on and let it go into the expansion of that part be.
But it's not some of these
Well, I wouldn't
things
agree
covered
on to it
under
now,
the inspection by the
to it now
state.
based on what he just said. He just said, from what I got out of it, that this is not necessarily things that need to be done this year.
I'm saying he's
Well,
recommending that they need to be done,
And dealing
but
with it,
they're
I'm
not
looking at the
failure.
roof.
They
I
haven't
know
failed
from,
yet.
From experience, if you keep putting it off and putting it off, it's gonna create other damage.
Well,
it a
And all-
want?
we all know that this would come out of fund balance, so we can come back to them and decide. which ones
If
we
you
want
take
to do.
away the awning, you got about 600,000. One thing y'all can do when we come back to it is to give him a flat amount of money and let him prioritize these projects.
That's why I think we need to go through them all and see what it is we have got on this list that would come out of fund balance, and then see what the board's appetite is to spend fund balance, and then let y'all prioritize them, staff level, and do whatever number we tell you we willing to do.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Mr. Manager, are some of these things also, when they come and inspect, I'll get jails from would any of those things be under there if they come and say, y'all got a leaking roof? Why haven't you done fixed it? I mean,
Maybe not the roof, but maybe the HVAC if they're not working at all.
the latest thing they'll be,
Or the
yeah.
plumbing if they see water
Like
on
the
the ground
dorms and
or
the
something.
stuff that they have to deal with every day. So some of this thing maybe, if we don't fix, I'll keep them fixed, maybe mandated by the state, you do it.
Let me assure you on the jail, because of the Mitchell County fire, whenever I get a jail report, we address every single issue from the state that is noted on that report.
Well, I'm sure you do to make sure we're in compliance, but some of these things may be some of the things that we know going to happen
So these
before
are
next year.
discretionary, all that discretionary.
We will always try to address those
Needs
jail.
first.
Yeah, those jail matters that the state points out to us.
Yeah, like the
We don't want to
plumbing.
ignore those.
Okay, so the doors, we okayed, right?
The doors we okayed, we're taking
Out of
out
this
the
year's fund
awning,
balance.
and the rest is about 600,000, and we can, y'all can later come back and set an amount, and put it in that department's capital budget so that they can then prioritize
But the
these
doors
things.
are approved, like you said, out of this year's fund
Yeah.
balance, so they don't really affect next year.
Right, we're gonna take that out of this year's fund balance, give them the go-ahead to do it.
I'm sorry, what about the grants that we're waiting on?
We can't budget that until we get it.
So we're still gonna anticipate?
Well, you gotta see if you're gonna get the grant before you spend the money, because most of them won't let you go backwards, so.
That's why
y'all-
we were
y'all do
waiting.
that.
That might be why we were
Yeah.
waiting.
We gonna prove it, and y'all work the details out.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, the next thing is the sheriff EMS IT CAD software. Y'all heard from the sheriff's department and emergency services. It's a
Where does the money come from?
$1 million. Well, after the first year, there's gonna be some parallel costs, dual costs, whatever, the first year, because the old system's gonna still have to be kept up. But their analysis shows that what we're paying right now in maintenance after the first year will be less than what we're paying currently with this CAD software. If y'all would like clarification on this project, I can tell you I think it's, I don't have that information with me, but it was like $1 million. They're financing it. The vendor is financing it 0%.
Like buying a new car.
And it's something they've asked for. Is it something they've got to have? No, it allows them to connect with some other agencies in the area more efficiently.
Share information.
Share
discretion.
information, gather
And report.
information, yeah.
And report better.
Let me ask you one thing, the maintenance cost, if we keep the old system, is that money in the base budget?
Yes.
So if we were to do that, would the base budget decrease because we took that maintenance cost back out?
We're not taking it out the first year because we're,
All right, so you answered my
for the
question.
first year, there is double cost.
So it's discretionary reoccurring funding is what it is.
Yes.
Yes.
And on our last session, our worksheet, we had 160,000 budgeted for that,
Right, that was
But-
due to the financing. and
It's
so
6
we went
years.
back.
6 years, mhm.
Right.
from 7 to 5.
Was it 7? Or
It was 7
6?
years,
Okay.
what I had.
Gotcha.
And why did we go to 5? At
Because it
0
doesn't
interest,
have
we
to-
want 7 years.
Well, it doesn't, it goes to the LGC over 5 years, and so,
We didn't want it on the list. Didn't want it on the LGC list as a total.
there would be all kinds of,
Okay. So, yeah, we'll look at that a little bit more, because going to the LGC is not the worst thing in the world. They're pretty nice. Well, what was the additional concerns if you go over 5 years? Just,
well, it has to be 4 years and 11 months, and I think that was the rate that the vendor had offered
for 5 years?
for 5 years.
Not 7?
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
Okay. So that's discretionary, reoccurring. Okay, Sheriff's Department. The first 3 items are not things in this year's budget, I don't believe. There might be some radios or cameras, but for the most part, these are one-time. But I will say that the cameras and the radios is an incremental thing that it's not reoccurring, but they're gonna want to each year replace, yeah.
Portion this year, they're gonna buy a portion next year and then the following year.
When you say it's financed for 5 years, that's the per year payment.
Yes,
Okay, so it's 5 times that.
right.
That's correct.
So
That's
that,
reoccurring.
that's reoccurring. How many of them are reoccurring? Just that one?
That one's reoccurring, but also the portable radios, they want to buy them in installment,
By 10 this year, 10 next year, 10 the following year.
But there's no commitment made, so
There's no
it's,
financing on it,
Right.
that would be the purchase of it.
right. So that really could be fund balance and not reoccurring.
Right.
Everything else could be, looks like.
Right. Last year, they got 14 cars, and what was the amount last year for vehicles?
First one is,
300 and,
last year for vehicles, 332,500.
and what is this amount?
387,099.
Okay, so last year,
This would be.
y'all spent 332 on, I think, 14 vehicles. I think most of them were Chargers. This year, he wants some specialty vehicles, and the total cost is 387, one time. It's one time, but he replaces vehicles every year. But no commitment if, I mean, he could go a year without getting any vehicles if y'all did not appropriate funds for that purpose.
Does anybody else get asked constantly why we have SUVs?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
I asked
Yes.
myself.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
No need.
I
Already
just get
taken.
asked a lot from the public why we got
Yeah,
them.
that's a want item, not a need item.
One thing y'all could do there is like we talked about with the maintenance, building maintenance, is you could give them a flat amount,
Let them decide.
let them decide.
Well, basically, we can put that whole category in discretionary fund balance and keep going and add it to our cumulative total.
Yeah.
When we get through jail.
Yep. Okay, jail, cell sense detector, discretionary. The purpose of that is to detect, as it says there, cell devices and metal objects. Radio repeater within the jail, they have trouble communicating because of the walls. And this would facilitate communications. 25 new radios and 2 chargers for the detention center. That's a new item. I think they have a vehicle. They have a van, one van.
2 vans.
Yeah.
I think it's 2 or 3. 2.
So,
That's a want. That's a want we need.
so again, I'd say that's discretionary.
I have one question here. I don't believe we'll ever get through it like this.
Oh, we're halfway through it.
We're getting there.
What are we through? Good, hard,
We're
halfway
doing
through,
good.
halfway through the first.
Halfway through the expansion items, the first pass-through. So we're,
So that list of the jail, we decided was all discretionary, one-time expenditures?
I would say so.
Okay. So discretionary fund balance. Emergency services, oh my word.
Yeah. One of the divisions need a new truck, $30,000. Then the remounts and finance for 4 or 5 years, be $130,000
Per year.
per year.
Per year.
So that'd be reoccurring for 4 or 5 years. Towers, public radios, microwave link. Why do we not have those detailed? Do we know
It's one project.
it's all one project?
Yes, it's the project to get everything working the way that it should work. Because it talked about the microwave links, and then they found other issues with just fixing the microwave links. And so there's something with the towers and the radio. I can't explain it the way that Brian explained it, if you need some more information on it. But it's a big project that they have in the budget this year to fix 3 microwave links. But when they were looking at it further, they found that it was more than just the microwave links. And so this would, my understanding, fix the problem with this
Should
project
fix it.
number.
I think it's definitely discretionary funding, and I'm not convinced they quite know what they're doing yet to get that problem fixed. I mean, we've heard it, this will be the third time is how it's gonna get fixed, and all three times are completely different. And it is indeed a problem, because I hear it, I heard it again this morning down at Middlesex, is when it's gonna get resolved, but I just don't have a comfort level that we're there yet. But irregardless, that whole list is discretionary, and all, the first item, or the second item, which is reoccurring, is non-reoccurring, except for the last one, which is certainly reoccurring. So you got 2 reoccurring and 2 fund balance discretionary.
Well, the reoccurring at the bottom, I'd never heard of until
The day we were in here.
the day before we were in here, or the week before we were in here.
Can we get some kind of information on the runs that the trucks across the county are making, not just this one particular incident here in the southern part? I mean,
Maybe
are we utilizing them all at that level? Is there opportunity to utilize them better to avert, this cost?
I'm not sure what they can get for you. I would think they could get you.
Well, they know how many runs they're making every day.
Yeah.
You know that, don't they?
Yeah, but, yeah, we can find out. We can find out.
He says he needs a crew to assist the call volume in the southern end of the county, and my question is, okay, have you got crews in other areas that you could utilize more efficiently to help the southern part of the county?
Again, I did not know anything about that until after we'd had our budget meeting, and,
I don't know if you'll know then or not.
and it came up, and that's the same time it came up about the 24-hour shift problem.
Well, the last item to me, being the way it came to us, and even to you, Mr. Manager, is certainly we're headed there. We have in place procedures that gets us through that, because we've got 3 firms under contract that we call. I mean, the citizens shouldn't be suffering. It may be the fact that we call an outside person to do it, but I don't think it's the year to consider an item like this. Do you disagree with that? Well, I'd like to just recommend we move that one off, knowing that we've got contract services that are sitting and hoping we will call them, and look at it once we get in the reval, know what we're dealing with. Wayne, you disagree with that?
I do not, but I'd still like to see what
Sure,
utilization of
that.
all the trucks is.
Yeah.
We'll try to get that for you.
That's
And not just
229.
a snapshot one day. Give me some period of time to utilization of the trucks.
yeah.
Well, that was my concern about the number used per 24-hour shift, the number of calls, was that one day, was that 1 week, or was that an average? And
Okay.
I'm not sure what it was.
Cut it everywhere we can.
Animal control truck replacement, y'all know Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill said that if y'all don't want to put it in there, he'll make do. If you want to put it in there, he will not spend that money until he needs that money.
It's a one-time expenditure out of fund balance
That's right.
for category.
And
Did he tell you
his,
anything about the condition of the truck?
they're not in great shape.
He said it had over
Get it there.
150,000 miles,
Yeah,
if I remember.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to give him that truck. Bill is very good about controlling spending.
He is.
Yeah,
Yes.
Well, you gotta hear me in saying it, but I was gonna say the same thing. Let it stay in there.
If fund balance out of next year stays in there,
Why can't he go and get it this year?
fund balance out of this year, leave it in there.
Well, why can't we just, okay, it's left in there, but we know he's not gonna use it unless that would stop on it.
No, he said if that was your wishes,
Yeah,
he
but
would
if
rather
it
go ahead and
was-
replace it.
Right.
Yeah, and let him do that, because
This year.
sometimes you wait too long and it can be real costly.
He was just trying to be accommodating.
Right.
But
I would hope that maybe by doing it this way, that we may entice other department heads to follow Mr. Hill's model of how he runs it, and rewards will come forth.
Right.
Keep open,
Pardon?
keep open,
So we'll,
keep
we'll,
open.
Keep open.
Keep hoping.
I understand,
Yeah.
Rich, I just,
Let him go ahead and get it.
we'll move that to this year,
No problem.
and take it out of next year's.
well, I would say if you have to get asked why he got it, that usually answer that
Yes.
Ms. Richardson and I just agreed on.
That's a good answer.
The next item is a request by the Board of Elections to go ahead and buy the first part of the equipment that will be necessary for 2020. I'm not sure why it'll be necessary for 2020, but I don't know if it's a new mandate or new type of machine, must be equipped specifically, but my idea is if a second vendor comes into the state, if you've already invested with one vendor, you're kind of locked in, you don't have that flexibility. If you want to put some money aside, I would put it in a reserve.
Well, the other thing,
Rather
generally
than-
right at the last minute, the federal government comes in on these mandates and help you do that, but if you've already done it, they don't reimburse you. I think we just need to get closer to the point.
I think
Because the
not,
last time we heard for 3 years, you got to spend this, and in the end, they picked up most of the tab, and we spent 20%.
yeah,
So why don't we work that model again?
yeah, the state may come in and pay that.
Was it the state or the
Yeah.
federal? Somebody came in and paid.
The federal had some money, and then
This-
there was something that we had to change for the state,
I believe you're right. yeah.
and they came up with some
I
money.
just know we ended up paying 20% of what we heard for a while with Matt and Faye.
But it might have been the state using federal money to do it. So, what we're really looking at is 2019.
Right.
And if we have to buy $500,000 worth of equipment, we can finance it.
Well, if we
At
at
that
least
time.
know then what rebound did to us.
Why not put a little bit in there? You got, what, 3 years before it's,
If we were gonna pay as you go, I would say yes, but as he just said, there might be state or federal money that helps provide.
I understand that, but we ought to set a little aside in case we have to match it with a certain percent.
Well, I would say it'd be
It's not
better
big, it's not a high
to,
priority.
if we're spending that kind of money on election equipment that's gonna be used for 8 or 10 years, that we finance it for 5 or 6 years, and our share, because it's gonna be used over that time period.
Yeah.
And it could be completely different in
There's
2018.
nothing
Yeah.
wrong with financing it, but we ought to
Yeah,
have
seed
some,
money.
have some, right, reserved there.
Well, I would just suggest to you that with all these other,
I don't think it's high priority, I think.
yeah,
Move on.
it's not something we want to set aside $70,000.
No, I
If you-
didn't mean.
Yeah, yeah.
But some.
Yeah, I would definitely, if you're gonna set it aside, I would set it aside and not spend it on this new counter. That could be obsolete in 3 or 4 years, so,
I wouldn't even set it aside for the county.
yeah, I'm not recommending that we do. I'm just
There's
saying if you want.
Potential that it can get funded from another source.
Yeah. And if not, we can finance it over the life of the expected life of the new
I think that's
equipment.
too far out to be.
Okay, the Southern Nash Senior Center, we've set aside $250,000 already. The estimate, I'm not sure who came up with that, I guess Derek, was 900,000, so we plugged in 650. That is, we've got a reimbursement resolution, so if you choose to finance that up to 10 years, you could get a good rate, or you could pay from your existing fund balance.
I think the board has committed to that project. I'd like to hear the staff's recommendation on whether they want to use fund balance or whether they want to finance it, but I definitely think we need to handle it one way or the other in this upcoming year's budget, so we can keep moving on it. Anybody disagree with that?
What you recommend?
Well, interest rates are very low right now. We have a very comfortable fund balance. you put in 250. I don't think, I'm not sure what it's gonna cost.
The only things that the borrowing does take away from our 10 million.
But we're gonna have to do that in
Yeah.
two-part anyway.
I think,
We got other needs that are gonna be more costly than this, and
Right.
we've got a fund balance that'll cover
That'll
this.
that.
Okay, we can put another 250 aside in June of this year and put the rest in next year's if you wanna pay as you go, or,
you got 250 already
no, we've got 250 set aside last year.
last year.
And we don't, last year, we were gonna see about a $1.8 million surplus at the end of the year, and y'all set aside $1 million.
I know of it, I remember that.
Yeah, so we ended up with 800,000 this year. She's more pessimistic usually than I am, and she was afraid we're gonna not have any fund balance added last year, and we ended up adding a little bit because revenues do lag expenditures, and they come in August, as late as August, and you put them back. So, but we're not, the further you get out from not raising taxes for an 8-year period, the less money, when I came in here, we got a lot of extra ambulance money, we got a lot of extra ad valorem money, and so that gave us an influx of new money, really. But we're not able to every year add $2 or $3 million to our revenues. So it's coming, I would say this year, we're gonna probably break about even.
Do you want to take the whole 650 out of next year's fund balance, or do you want to take some out of this year's and the rest of it out of next year's? I think that's the question.
Yeah, what do you think?
It don't make no difference one way or the other to me, but
It's one time,
what do you
take it out
wanna
of
do?
next year,
Take it out of next year, that's
Yeah.
fine.
and we can always,
So that's fund balance and
No.
it's approved? Is that what the board's saying, Mr. Chairman?
I don't know the board can see it, which,
That
which you
would be
prefer?
that would be I'm okay with that.
Taking it out of fund balance?
Next year?
Not this year, but next year.
it'd be one-time
We already.
capital fund balance.
Don't we have some already appropriated?
250.
250.
From last year.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything this year.
You talking about on this year's physical budget that we're in?
Right. So, but what the finance director suggested, we take the whole 650 out of next year's fund balance.
And it'll be one-time expenditure, even though there will be some operating costs in the
Well,
future.
if you
17,
already, if you
18.
already have
17.
250,
What we're
why
talking.
you need to take
So we
650?
need 9.
Well, the total is 9.
Okay,
It's not.
all right, let me write that down.
So you're calling 16, 17 next year's?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm calling the budget we working on right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get it out.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's what we're talking about.
Which is
Yeah.
16,
Okay.
17.
Everybody agree
yes.
with that?
Yes,
Fund
sir.
balance? Okay, all right.
You a long piece of paper.
Now, that's one time,
Go ahead.
All these next year's, this year's, last year's getting.
let me make sure,
We need chocolate.
let me make sure that one-time capital expenditures in next year's budget will not require a reduction in the base budget for departments. Is that correct?
Who you looking at?
You,
I won't pay attention,
Hey.
I'm sorry.
one-time capital expenditures in next year's budget that we take out of fund balance will not have to be offset by cuts in the continuation budget.
That's not my thought.
It's not?
I agree with what you said.
Okay. I just want to make
If
sure,
it's a-
otherwise I'd rather take it out of
I understand.
this
No.
year's budget.
As
Okay,
I stated to start with, we're looking at this as one-time expenditures, but certainly not, if we spend this money, it don't affect that department's budget for next year or the year after.
Correct.
It's just a decision this board made.
Just
Because we
reduces
get-
fund balance.
right, I got you. So
All right,
capital
all right.
fund balance appropriation.
All right, let's
Got you.
pause here and take a 10-minute break.
Amen.
Amen.
And when we come back, we'll start with the DSS.
The next item is the DSS positions. They're in priority order. First one is a position that deals with that food nutrition issue that we talked about the other day at the legislators meeting. The 95% threshold that we're required to do by July 1. We've been hiring some temps and part-time, and she's requesting another position. The second one is a position she asked for that was frozen at one time, and the assistant is taking that duty, doubling up, the assistant director. And the third one is the result of when we did the analysis for the salary study for those two departments, was a position based on caseload that was way out of whack according to the consultant, and the fact that the existing person in that position has 44 years longevity, and the feeling that we needed to put in another person in that position. I did ask her if there was any trade-offs, any positions that are unfilled or that can be consolidated. She has come up with one position. I forwarded that to you yesterday, didn't I?
You did.
And did you get that, Rosemary?
Yes.
Do you know what position that was? I don't have that with me.
It was,
But I did get it from her.
So she is offering up one position.
Oh, I think what she said was, she has a position that she thinks that's open. It's not one of these. She's gotten applications from another unit to fill it with. And one of those positions, she thinks she could leave vacant if it is filled, if it indeed is filled by the person who's applying for it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But she's got to go through the process. She's got to look at all the qualifications and all the applicants.
So again, this is reoccurring.
Yeah.
It's not one time. It is in priority order. So we can either move it on to consider in the future. You can go ahead and eliminate one or two of them or three of them. We can handle it any way y'all want to.
But they are discretionary, reoccurring, and need to be labeled that, be looked at with the rest of the discretionary, reoccurring when we determine revenue available.
Okay.
I do have one question. The one in the middle, which is by far the highest salary, I had a thought at one time when we consolidated that in health that we would be eliminating a position, being the assistant director. And then I saw it got filled pretty soon after that.
Now, the assistant director at the health department is not being filled.
Right, but I thought it was also the same, it would be the same at social services, but I saw it was filled.
Yeah, that was never the intent. We must have, what we were talking about as far as eliminating, we were holding it. I wasn't approving
In
it.
other words, we took the assistant director and she got promoted to the director.
Right.
And then about the same time, we combined the two departments. So
Right.
I thought that position would become a eliminated position, but it didn't. Maybe that's just my
Yeah.
logical thinking, it wasn't correct.
Yeah, that wasn't the
So
intent.
Is this person, that salary, would it be the third person in line in that department?
I think so.
It would be.
Well,
No, not, I think there's another position just like this. There's two, what are they called? Program administrators. There were two, and we froze one of them. So one program administrator has like 8 people that she supervises, And then the frozen position, that supervision was transferred at that time to Donna Boone, who was the assistant. So the new assistant is in the assistant position, and she's also
Okay.
acting as a supervisor,
Okay.
Administrator.
Which is what
That-
you try to do with stuff like that. That's what we're doing everywhere else, right? When we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this what it takes to, unfreeze that
She-
81,000?
Yeah, she's asking to unfreeze it, and I suspect, given a unit that large, 16, 17 people, that they will promote from within somebody that's already, rather than bringing somebody from outside to be a supervisor. Generally, they're structured such that they would promote somebody. And then that would open up a position underneath, a lower paying position.
Well, just in quick philosophy question. With the department structured like it is now, with a request like that, does it get Mr. Hill's blessings? Does he get involved in that like he would if it was his help? Or do they still operate reasonably independent?
At our budget meetings, both were present. Mr. Hill was present, I was present, Rosemary, Donna, Mr. Hill, and the other Donna, yeah. We were all present.
You told me who was at the meeting, but does he get involved, is my question.
He is in the discussions,
Okay. Oh.
yeah.
Well,
But I would say that, you know, we're still young as a
I
combined
understand. I
agency.
understand. Right.
Most of the,
I'm sure with his nature, he does it with extreme caution.
right,
Gotcha.
right. And, but like I said, the first two positions are positions that she has requested. The third one was the result of a consultant's recommendation.
Gotcha.
What consultant are they looking at?
Which consultant?
Yeah, right.
It's the Sylvia Johnson. She used to be with state personnel, and now she advises county health and social service departments. And she helped us with consolidation and making sure our personnel policy had all the things in it that's required under federal law to be in a county personnel policy, to bring those employees under our, under a county personnel policy.
Under your employment. Okay. I said under your employment, right?
Under the county's personnel policy as opposed to the state's personnel policy. She's been on retainer by both the health department and social services for some time, many years.
Okay.
well, I just think as a sub-administrator, that's the one for high salary.
Okay, so we'll put that as discretionary, reoccurring.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next are two increases requested by the agencies, the special appropriations outside agencies. We've put in the budget at their current level of spending. These are just increases requested by those agencies. And again, that's discretionary.
Well, of course, I have no doubt that there's need there for that, there's need for a whole lot more from these two agencies. But where we are with funding and the fact that if we have it do something for one or two, I would think the whole list would have some thought of coming back to us. I'd like to just say we can't do that and take it off the list if we can agree on that. Certainly nothing to do with needs, but it's just where we are today. Any thoughts on that,
It's fine with me.
ladies?
You're not cutting them, you're just cutting their
No.
increase request.
You're on the same.
Not moving forward the request for an increase.
Right. Okay, any objection? Is that the will of the board? Okay.
But please explain it.
Huh?
please explain why we have to do that,
Okay.
because they both do great work.
They sent in a request and they haven't bugged us or anything like that. They're,
And the rest of them came in
the same as
the
last
same
year.
as last year, okay.
The next one is the initiative I came up with to try to help the 5 outlying libraries. This year's base budget does not have any increase for Braswell, and we took this out of the base budget so y'all could consider it. Again, what it is we currently give those 5 other libraries $13,500. I'm recommending we go to $15,000 and offering up for a 1-to-1 match, additional funding up to $5,000 county funds if they matching whatever the locality will increase their current funding levels from the 15-16 year.
32 is what?
Is
If
the total.
everybody does that?
If everybody does it. And I don't anticipate everybody doing it, but I think if we offer it to one, we should offer it to all, and,
I asked the last time, could we, I know we get X amount of money from the state that all goes to Braswell Library. And my question was, can we take that amount of money and distribute it by using your number here? And put some of it in some of the outline and not all at one place?
I did request that information, and I got an email on it, and I have not studied it close enough to give you an answer, to tell you the honest truth.
So it's a matter of whether the state would have to approve us doing that, is that what you're saying?
Did I send you that email, Rosemary? Did I forward that to you from Katie Roach?
Let me go back and see.
She gave an explanation to me.
Right.
I got it when I was away from the office on my cell phone, and I have not referred back to it.
I'm just saying, that this is a reoccurring expense, of course, you can't give it and take it away too easy, but that could be done, I think that's what we should do. But if it can't be done, I don't see how we can.
Some of them are structured different.
Right.
Well, if you did that, you would actually be reducing the funds going to Braswell
You would be,
from the county.
correct. But it seems to me if you get state money for libraries, all libraries in the county should get some portion of it, which would hold true for one of our partners, which it all goes to not Braswell and then to another library.
Yeah. The Board of Trustees would have to approve that, I guess. And I've been, the reason I came up with this proposal
Right.
is because, believe me, I've talked about using part of that money to offset any loss that they had if they contracted with one of these outlying libraries. And they're very protective of the money and don't like the idea of losing money and subsidizing that branch operation costs with any money that presently is being used by Braswell.
Some of them are handled different, right? Some of them are, the library was built by individuals in these towns, these small towns especially.
Yeah.
Somebody.
Yeah, they're all different.
And built by a person over there in memory of or whatever. So they wouldn't have the same expense that you had if you had to buy it or whatever.
The smaller libraries run on budgets of $25,000, $30,000, except for Cooley. Cooley does get a lot more money from Nashville,
Right.
and their budget's larger than the other ones. Let me,
Well, we don't need to hold up for that, but I think we need to know what our ability to decide where that money's spent is this forward. It sounds like you're saying it may be the library board that has that call. Which I-
Here it is, I got it right here, and I will forward to everyone. So between now and when you get a chance, you can look at it. Forward to Nash Commissioners and to Rosemary and Donna. Okay, I sent it. I think y'all are the ones that designate who gets that state aid.
Right.
But I'm not sure you can split it up. And the formula is affected if you send it somewhere else.
The formula.
The state
Oh,
formula.
state formula,
The state
okay.
formula.
Not the formula.
Well, I mean, we were, this year it's 131,000. She indicates that if we, did you get it? Rosemary, can you?
I'm trying to read, well, it's mostly links to the state aid requirements, so we have to dig through those to see.
Well, it's discretionary, reoccurring. Just get us that answer then.
Discretionary wouldn't necessarily be reoccurring, would it, Z? Is this a
Discretionary.
one-time thing?
Well-
15.
Or were you thinking every year?
Yeah, I mean,
You
if
were
you,
thinking every year.
Can't give it to them, then take it back.
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to take it
Okay.
back. It would be reoccurring.
That's true.
I just know that those libraries out in the county, some aren't supported at all by the municipalities.
I
Some are.
like the idea, I
Yeah.
do. And what I don't like is I've asked for 14 years in a row to get the usership of Brownsville Library, and won't nobody give it to me.
We'll try to get it for you.
Oh, you'll be able to get it, I tell you, they won't give it to you. I wish they would, but if you can get it, that'd be great.
We'll try. We'll try.
You mean based
I plan
on?
to ask, and, of course, I've been slow on doing it, but I had planned to get that information a month ago.
Well, I've talked
I-
to every librarian we
I,
have.
well, I believe they don't give it to me.
Well, if you share it with me, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it.
I share it with everybody.
Okay.
You know, I think it's gonna be in their best interest to do so.
Well, I got assured 2 years ago by the chairman
Well,
that I would get it,
Well, the
that
two-
it never came. That's
well, the two of us are different.
Sir?
I said the two of us are different on request.
Okay,
Yeah, you probably asked in a nice way, I'm on demand.
well, I did ask it a nice way.
So Fred's gonna get the user list.
Okay. That's fine.
We will try to get that. We will request it
How much Fred's gonna say if you
or
want it.
demand it.
Fred's gonna say, if y'all want to get the money, you better give it to me.
Okay, that's fine.
That's right.
No, that's what I'm gonna do, demand.
We hold a
And
check.
I know it's in their best interest.
That's what I want to do.
Okay, well, that concludes the expansion list. Y'all want to go back through it and add up or discuss the discretionary ones or discuss the or put a figure on some of those that we talked about, maybe being able to, like building maintenance, the totals, 600,000, giving them a lesser amount and letting him prioritize it, or,
Well, where we're at, Mr. Lamb, I think is, we probably need to do what you said, is see what's under 3 categories. Of course, some of it we spent this morning. But then, before we decide what we're doing, we got to decide how much revenue we're gonna create out of the existing budget. How much revenue we're gonna free up out of the existing budget.
you mean revenue, how much we're gonna appropriate in fund balance?
No, how much, when you get down to the discretionary reoccurring items, then you got to know how much you saved out of the base budget to spend against that total.
Well, because we have, again, we have not dealt with the revenues yet. So if we maintain the 2.8 million that y'all appropriated for fund balance for current expense for the last, since I've been here and before I was here, the original base budget only appropriated 2.8 million, the exact same amount. And since that time, we took out the COLA, we took out the health insurance. So if we reconcile that number back to 2.8 million, it could affect how much we would have to cut out, if any. I mean, it's a moving target. It's if you want to change that fund balance appropriated, and simply say if we,
Well, that ain't what I'm thinking.
if you're saying if we add 500,000 in new reoccurring cost, then we got to go to the base budget and cut 500,000, even if we're only appropriating $1 million from fund balance compared to 2.8 million last year? Is that what you're saying?
No, my logic is based on fund balance being equal to what it has been.
Okay.
Which is what I assume you got in that $90 million. Is that not the case?
No, because we pulled things out of the base budget, like the COLA and the health insurance. Again, we haven't dealt with the fund balance. The original base budget that we provided last time appropriated 2.8 million from fund balance for operations. But then we've taken out from the base budget certain items, and therefore that reduced that 2.8 million from fund balance.
Whose fund
So what
balance are you
did,
taking it from?
what did we take out of the original base budget? We took out the COLA and the health insurance and the libraries?
Right,
Is that it?
yes.
So,
But
so right now,
You say you took out the code, you mean you took out the 2%.
we took out the 2% and we had it at the time budgeted without taking out the state contribution, so it was 670.
So what you're saying, if I understand you right, that number that we had last time, which was 91,195,000, had a fund balance appropriation equal to what we had in the current year we're in.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so now that you've pulled those three items and moved them, that number became this number.
Because we have
Well,
not,
that's-
we
I got
will,
you.
we
Okay.
will reevaluate
Sure.
revenues before we
Cool.
submit a budget to y'all in May.
All right.
But we haven't done that since the last meeting.
Okay, well, I got that. I mean, I understand that. But what we were hoping to do, Mr. Outlaw, correct me if I'm wrong, is we were hoping to work against what we gotta do next year by at least $1 million.
That would be my desire
It's
to
what
work
now?
to that.
I'm sorry.
What we were hoping to be able to do is to hedge against our impending cliff next year and pick up, reduce that appropriation of fund balance by at least $1 million minimum.
So
When-
1.8 million, or
Yes, sir.
can we compromise on 2 million?
We already compromised when we went to 1 million instead of 1.5.
Well, I'm still for us doing something with COLA.
Understand?
At least 1.5%.
Well, I think when we get the revenue number we got available, we'll start working on those items that we categorized like that.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
the
just
first one
don't,
on the
I
list.
just don't think we just throw that COLA completely away and it doesn't reappear into our budget. And the question is whether we
Nobody has-
want 2 or 1.5.
We hadn't even had this.
It hasn't been thrown out.
Okay, let me say this. I understand what you're trying to do with the $1 million, but what's your basis on the $1 million cut? Is it the exact amount we have in this year's budget?
No, the basis
is
is
it-
totally on, expect a $4 million revenue shortfall next year. I would like to find $2 million this year, $2 million next year. I hear the board disagreeing with my philosophy quite a bit, and so I guess I cut my expectations in half.
We're expecting 10%, hoping for 5. Half of 5 is $1 million.
Okay, but my question is, when we're looking at $1 million to reduce, are we talking about $1 million from this year's original budget, or are we talking about 2% added to that minus $1 million? Because in a typical year, you have a 2 or 3% increase in your budget, just the cost of business, things cost more,
You
utilities.
don't have an increase in your budget when your revenues are going down.
Revenues aren't going down this year.
Well, if you want to deal with all of it next year, that's fine. We'll come in here with 2 hatchets and an axe next year, but that ain't the way to do it, Mr.
We're
Mine.
just trying to be a little proactive.
We're trying to not to be so aggressive next year.
So what you're saying is, this year's final budget in 15, 16, whatever that figure was, you want next year's budget, general fund, to be $1 million less than this year's budget was.
I think that's what this board should work real hard to try to accomplish.
And the budget that we presented is what? The original one was a slight, like, 0.4% increase. But we've taken these items out, and so now it's like,
But please,
So
I get one vote.
I know.
The rest of the people need to say
So
what they
that's the
want.
difference between, if I'm looking at it, that's the difference between
see
91
it.
and the 90, where we are right now.
okay, the 91 original
Yeah.
budget,
91,195.
91,589.
Well, I'm looking at a March 28, so 91,195. But
March 28, 91,195.
Did that add wrong? Or no?
What does the printout say?
While they're looking at that, I just don't think that we can balance this budget on the back of the employees. They've worked hard all year, and I think they deserve their raise when we get looking at that.
If this, you're saying 91, let's see.
91,789. What is 91,195?
What was the original?
Don, I'm looking at this sheet right here.
Oh, that was this year's. I mean, what we were proposing.
Proposing for this year?
That's right. Yeah.
No, but what,
But we understood that was equal to last year's.
no.
Oh,
That
what
was,
is that relation to
that
that?
was 0.74% increase.
Reasonably the same, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All
So,
right.
so it was 91, the original budget this year was 91,789,000.
Well, how can it be more if this is, if that's an
Increase.
increase?
No, that's it.
Did I say it wrong? Let me see. Excluding the capital.
Doesn't make a difference. What is the budget this year compared to number?
The original budget, including capital, was 91,789,878.
That's without capital.
That's
That's
with
with
capital.
capital.
With
But
capital.
you need to have capital out of it.
So you take capital out,
That's at the bottom.
and then you decrease it, less 734,000 was capital.
734.
for this
So
year.
you're
For
roughly
15,
around
16.
speaking 91 million.
But then we added 219, that's the defibrillators and voice over IP that we financed. So,
That we've already done,
Right.
that we've already financed, yeah.
yeah.
So,
So we're back to 91.2, is that what you're saying?
That,
91.3?
Where,
there won't no
Does that
we
make
in this
sense?
statement there.
Let's see.
well, let me see. Let me look at this real quick. Okay, I would just back out that 700, what we appropriated from fund balance for capital in last year's was 700 and what?
34,000.
Okay, back that out of the 91,789. And that would be our non-capital,
91,055,000.
something like
Is
that.
that where we at, Don?
91 million. Are you talking about the original budget from last year? or-
Yes, yes.
Minus the capital from fund balance.
Yeah, 91,055,000.
You know, we don't need to sit here and get the exact numbers, they will just, that's what we hope, that's what I hope we can do. I don't know what the rest of them want to do. I just don't have to do it all next year.
Yeah,
Of course, I've been saying this is the third year of business.
That's right.
Ain't got nowhere to get, but I thought, can't get ready to sit at the middle of the road on us.
What is
Well,
the
you know, until y'all vote on whether you're going to keep it at 67,
Oh, that's
or go to
okay.
68, or 69, or 70, or 71, or 72, we don't know what we're gonna need next year.
Well, until you can tell us what the rebound is, we ain't gonna know.
Looking at.
We can tell you that it's gonna be a loss of revenue
I know that,
at the 67-cent rate.
correct. But we don't know what. What we know it's gonna be significant.
We know it's gonna be
We
8
need
to 12%, 8 to 12,
Okay,
pretty
but
much.
we need to try to get part of that. Don't pile it up to have to do it all next year.
But you only have to do it if you don't make an adjustment on your rate. So if your position prevails among the 7 members, that you keep it at 67, then yeah, we've got to make up
Okay.
$3, $4, $5 million.
Okay.
If there's some compromise and we go to a little less than revenue neutral, or to 68, 69, or 70, or 71 cent, then you don't have to make up $4 million.
But you
Well, we should
understand?
pursue every avenue to get as close to that 67
and then we.
cents as we can.
But $1 million this year, $1 million next
It's
year
still not
leaves
enough.
us at 69
Or 70.
or 70, yeah. Which is where you said you want to be anyway.
I did.
Yeah,
You did.
I said less than revenue neutral.
that was your
I
midpoint.
said less than revenue neutral.
You got it right here. What I wrote, you said it don't matter.
If you'll agree to 70, that sounds real good. Let's
Agree to what?
next year go
I
to
agree to
70.
67.
Well, we at odds.
Sir?
I said we are at odds, if that's your agreement. Yeah.
Well, that's all I can
have-
do today.
And, well, I think I'm,
Okay, so if we go to 91.
Well, you
did
know,
this before, so that I'm looking at it so we won't have to.
Well, nobody has to be at odds today if we can pull $1 million, find $1 million. Going into next year is when you guys can get at odds with each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you don't have
Right.
to walk out of here today at odds with each other. All you have to do is find $1 million.
well, but again, you're saying take $1 million out of this year's money that we had in this year's budget, find $1 million and not put it in next year's budget
Of reoccurring expenses.
of reoccurring expenses.
Yes, sir.
And then.
Which is 25% of what we're gonna need
Best
next year.
case next year, back to what I
If
think
your
Mr.
position
Bellfield's been all
prevails.
along,
Correct.
we're looking at maybe 5%. So next year, if Mr. Bellfield's projection of about 5% is spot on, then we're looking at $1 million or an adjustment in the tax rate. But if Mr. Davis's projection of maybe 10% is spot on, then next year we'd be looking at an adjustment in the tax rate or $3 million.
Okay, well, if y'all believe that we need to cut $1 million out of the base budget, regardless of what else we do, as far as the expansion items, it sounds like if we do $1 million out of the expansion or $2 million out of the expansion, you still want to take $1 million out of the base budget. If that's true, then let's go through the base budget and let's decide where we're gonna find $1 million in the base budget. I again, I respect y'all's opinions, and y'all have the votes, and I don't have a vote. But
What is your opinion then?
my opinion, if we can find some cuts in the base budget, let's find them and cut them. But I think the $1 million or 1.5 million or 700,000 is somewhat arbitrary and I understand if the position of Mr. Davis is implemented a year from now on revenue neutral, that we will need to find serious cuts. However, between our fund balance that we currently have and the fact that I think this is a pretty bare bones based budget anyway, that we've already cut over 400,000 out of at staff level, I don't know. I just have some concerns. For instance, and I'm with revenue projections. With revenue projections, I can get more aggressive on the revenue projections
Just don't give that.
and balance that $1 million down some. And so there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. It's not just cutting out of the base budget. It's other what's the word? Variables to the formula, including revenues, how much you are willing to take out of fund balance. Now, you're talking about changing the fund balance appropriated. That's a different, if you do that, we might have already cut some of that $1 million. If you cut the fund balance appropriated $1 million, you may or may not exactly need to cut $1 million. You wouldn't need to exactly cut $1 million because we've made some changes in the base budget. It's actually gone down, how much?
500, yeah, $500,000.
What we cut? No, I'm talking about what we took out. What is the current base
We
budget
took out this morning.
after what I took out, after we took out the
It went
COLA and,
It went from 91 to the 90.
329.
okay,
Yeah.
so I would argue that we've already cut 800,000 before we go forward. But that's without any COLA, that's without any health
Without any police cars?
without, no, that's capital.
Well, indeed you have. So what do? We take that number right there and do away with this list? No, we don't. The board's not gonna agree to that. Some of the board members not gonna agree to that. So you got to start taking some of these items over here on the expansion budget and move it back over here. That's
Well,
what the
until-
exercise we did. But
until-
what we're trying to do is see how much of it we can move back over there.
Yeah, well, again, to me, before you start backing out existing appropriations in the current year's base budget, we need to know several variables. One, what you want your fund balance appropriated to be. If that's $1.8 million, then we need to know which ones of these recurring things that we're gonna put in the base budget to know what we want to cut out of the rest of the budget.
Well, let's.
Because there's three variables.
Let's go at it like this. Do we have any kind of update on revals from the last time we heard them? Are we still looking at probably 10%?
I asked that question last week, and there's, next Thursday, I think we'll get an update, or Tuesday, is it Tuesday? Thursday.
Just a reminder to all you guys, you're invited, but if you're coming, and you want to eat, be a part of the meal, then you need to let me know in advance.
I'm planning
Otherwise,
to do that.
the presentation's at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Mr. Wren and Mr. Pearson are going to the,
Are they coming to eat?
yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Who is Mr.
There's a
Reed
Red
and Mr.
Cross
Pierce?
banquet that night.
Where's
Mr. Wren, the
Reed?
tax
West
administrator,
Mount Ruritan Club.
and Mr. Pearson, the
That's
guy doing the
21st.
revow.
Right.
At the Rose Hill.
If you're coming to eat, it starts at 7. If you're coming just for the program, it starts at 8. And I need to know that for meal planning purposes.
And that's, you say next Wednesday?
Thursday.
But I think
21st.
we have to assume that it's 10%. I mean, that's
Thursday,
what I'm,
time?
21st.
All right, well, 10% is how much money?
10% reduction in value.
4
Yes,
million.
sir. Is that 4 million?
It's, I know what the
7
tax
o'clock
base
It says
is.
8 o'clock.
Again, I don't know what 4 million is until y'all set a tax rate.
Well,
Well, we're
with the
estimating
current
at
tax rate,
10%.
is that not 4 million,
Okay, if, assuming a 67-cent tax rate,
right?
Right.
it would be, hold on,
Well, you said all along it's $4 million.
well, that's plus or minus, I mean, it's not exactly 4 million. I'm trying to give you as close a figure as I
Okay.
can come up with. At 100% collection, what do you? No, let me think in my head here. We get about 700,000 per penny. If you reduce 10% of the real and personal property, but not the vehicles, that's about 600,000 per penny. Revenue neutral, 73. It's gonna be around 4. It's gonna be around 4. I mean,
Well, that's what you've been saying
Plus
the
or
whole
minus,
time.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
All right, so we leave the tax rate alone, we're $4 million short income. We agree on that?
if you,
If we leave the tax
Yeah,
rate alone?
yeah.
All right. What you're suggesting that we do is try to cut the baby in half. So we're $2 million short.
That's what we're saying.
I don't remember saying 70. I thought I said 71 or 72.
You did, you did. Yeah, I was-
Yes, it is.
Well,
I've said 1 cent less than revenue neutral. It's been, which is a tax
all right,
cut.
well, let's just say this. Let's just say we split the baby in half. So we're looking at $2 million short income, correct?
Okay,
You agree with that?
yeah,
All we're trying to do is spread it over 2 years.
okay.
Now, I didn't concede that I'm gonna split the baby in half, nor did you concede.
Because we're very hopeful that Mr. Bellfield's projection of 5% will
It
be
is
the
right,
case.
that's correct.
Then, yeah.
But even if it's 10%.
So, I mean, so what we're saying, Z, is not off in the map.
Yeah,
It-
but I'm just saying that we're not in a, y'all have built a nice fund balance. You've got a cushion. You don't have to cut services or cut positions in order to have some figure that you need to cut. I just, again, would you consider this year cutting the tax rate to 61 cents?
Would I consider? That's a dangerous question.
I know.
Looking at me now.
I know, but what?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's wrong, wasn't it?
Well, that's what you're talking about doing next year by keeping the rate at 67. That's the equivalent of cutting this year's and having to find all that money in this year's budget. And I just don't think that we've got a lot of fat in this budget. I don't think there's, it's not, we don't have a budget that, I think if you start cutting $2 to $3, $4 million,
Nobody's
2 million.
saying 4 million. We talking about $1 million.
But that assumes no revenue growth.
Hmm?
That assumes that you're not gonna have any revenue growth. And we can
Which is-
assume that we're gonna have some revenue growth. Whether it's a little bit more in ambulance, 500,000 more in sales tax, there's gonna be some revenue. So it doesn't all have to come out on the spending side. It's a combination of the two.
I'll concede to that.
Yeah.
But I would hope that we're gonna use the same method to protect revenue that we've always used, which I understand it has been very conservative. And therefore, we have the fund balance that we have, but we should use the same model. We can't change one half of the model and leave the other half the same.
I think you make adjustments each year on your revenue projections.
Have you been doing it in the past?
Yeah,
Well, you need to do it again then.
yeah, we will.
Okay.
We
All
will,
right.
and we are. The year I got here, the projection was 600,000 more than what it ended up being.
Mhm.
The next year, we projected what we did the prior year.
Mhm.
This year, we're projecting,
Have we not done that yet? Y'all haven't done?
that's what we've got in this year's budget, basically.
Well, that's what I
is what-
thought you had said.
Is what we're projecting this year's to be.
Right. Well, isn't that what you do every
with-
time?
Well, a lot of counties factor in growth.
See, I want to do what this county has been doing, whatever it is.
It's done different things. My 2 years, we've tried to keep it what we think the current year is gonna end up being.
And I
In
think
prior
that's-
years, they factored in growth.
I think it's very
And when you
reasonable to use what you got this year.
Right.
What you project this year is gonna be in total.
Right, and I think next year, clearly with the new article, that we're gonna get some more revenue, and we're gonna get some growth.
But you're the one that asked us not to use that, and we agreed with you.
Right.
Okay.
But I'm saying next year, so next year, it's not, even if you keep a 67-cent tax rate, you're not necessarily gonna need to cut 4 million, because you're gonna
Granted.
have some revenue growth.
Sure.
And you'll have a year's history to base it on.
Yeah.
Let me ask you
That's
one
why
thing
we're
while
talking
you're
about
on.
one instead of two today.
Exactly.
I want to ask you one
I think it's a
thing.
good
What
compromise.
can Nash County
position.
people afford? Can they do it? In what way could they do it now? They're the one paying all the damn tax.
Yeah, I realize.
Billy on TV now, sir.
I don't care what I am, I don't care. I don't give a shit about that either.
Let me say this, okay, if we go to 1.8 million fund balance appropriated, and we've already cut, which is reducing the fund balance appropriated $1 million, $1 million. And we've already cut spending, how much? 800? Less than last year? Then that would suggest to me we need to find another 200.
If you cut fund balance projected by 1 million, I agree with you.
And we've already cut 800,000
Oh,
compared to last year's figure.
if you say so, whatever the numbers
Yeah,
are.
is that what you said?
Get the
From-
bulk of that from East Point.
And then that leaves,
The difference.
that leaves 200,000 before you add back in
That's right.
any expansion.
You got to find somewhere to put that expansion. That's what I'm trying to do. Because
How do y'all want to go forward?
huh?
How do y'all want to go forward?
Go with what Nash County.
We can
people
do one or two
afford, not what
things.
they want
We
or
can
what
go
we
through
want.
here and I don't think this board is the right, well, no, I'm gonna stop right there. We've always advocated, must outlaw Say what you'd like to, Mr. Allen, I'm gonna hush.
Well, I've already said what I would think would be the wise thing to do is get a head start on what is expected next year, whether it be 5% or 10%. It'd be a whole lot easier to deal with another million next year versus 2, or even 3 versus 4.
But procedural wise, how do you think we, at this point in this morning, should move forward next? Do we start going through this book? Or do we go through here? I just have a lot of trouble moving stuff off this list, or I know where the money's coming from.
I think
Well, I
maybe
think,
that's something you guys
I
could.
think this list here, the staff, they've met with
Right,
department
we
heads.
accept.
They've gone through the took out and
Still what
added
we gotta
in
do.
what they call necessity.
But does the staff, do they really understand, do they really understand where we're headed in terms of next year?
Well,
I mean, because it's gonna be a hard pill to swallow next year if you don't get a start on it this year. Well, assume best case, it's gonna be a hard pill to swallow.
If I have to make up 700,000 because of revenue less than, 1 cent less than revenue neutral, that's a different ballgame than if I have to make up 4 million. If it if his position prevails at 67
It'd
cents,
be 4 million.
huh?
If his position,
Prevails, it'll be 4
it'd be
million.
4 million.
yeah.
If there's something in between,
And I don't even know that that's his position. I think most of us would agree, based on what we've heard from Pearson already, that it's most likely gonna be about 4 million. I think you yourself said 8 to 12%. We're looking at mid-range,
I don't
10%.
agree.
No, it needs,
I
I
don't.
agree, that's been my position for several years, but I think I'm out of the way now. We got professionals in there doing it. But unfortunately, they come up with the same range of what we've been talking about.
And I don't dispute the amount of the reduction in values, whether it's 5%, 8%, 10%, 12%, 15%. What the assumptions that y'all are making that uses the $4 million figure assumes that there's gonna be no adjustment in the tax rate.
That's correct.
And that in effect, you're gonna have a 10% cut in taxes
And I wouldn't.
for county, and in the aggregate, for county taxpayers, we'll have a 10% cut in taxes.
Well, see, how do you ask, maybe you got an answer for this, how do you ask a man to pay the same amount of tax on a piece of property that has a 10% reduction on it? It's like saying, if you go buy you a new car and drive it off the lot, you know that the value goes down 10% when you go out the driveway, but you decide the next day you're gonna sell it, and you won't sell it for exactly what you paid for it. It don't work that way. So how do you tell that guy that his property is worth 10% less, but you won't even pay the same amount of taxes on it?
That's true in every reval there's ever been in the history of Nash County. You've had some winners, you've had some losers. You've had some people whose values went down in the last reval. And the reval before that, you had people whose values went down. And so, some went down a lot, some went up.
But
know?
the aggregate, this time, is going down.
And the aggregate, the value is going down. The value is going down, say 10%.
Yeah, which I don't agree with.
You don't agree that it's gonna go down 10%?
It's going down 10%? Nope. No.
Well, Fred, who do we need to hire to convince you of it?
Well,
Excuse me, Fred.
Our
Mr.
Our
Chairman.
consultant says
I tell
10
you
to
what.
12.
I listen to what the consultants say, and then I put my self into this thing and use my initiative.
Well,
And it's not going down 10%.
Well, we're all hopeful that it
I'll
does.
tell you like I've always told you, Nate, make that statement. Mr. Chairman, I hope you're 100% right.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
We are
Well, I
assuming a
tell
whole
you
lot,
what,
my friends.
Sir?
I
We're
don't
assuming a
miss
whole lot.
things too far.
Well, I hope you keep your record intact, that's all I'm gonna say.
I'm confident I will.
You know, if we were doing a two-year
give you a
budget,
bet
a
on
true
the side
two-year
that it
budget,
don't.
and setting rates for the next 2 years, which we don't have the authority to do, it would probably, like the General Assembly does, it maybe be easier, but we're not gonna know what the 17, 18 tax rate is until a year from now. So, I know your position, and your position, I suspect, may prevail.
I got no idea on that.
But-
I just know my position, more than likely ain't gonna change until I learn I've done something wrong in my calculations. Which could very well happen. I may have it wrong, but I just can't see asking a fellow to pay the same amount of taxes on a piece of property that ain't worth the same amount of money.
This, let me
But
ask,
Because
every-
the working class
You got,
Nash County citizen, his whole base of wealth generally is dependent upon the equity gain in his home.
and there's 51,000 parcels in this county, and every one of them stands alone.
That's right.
And
Yep.
some will be big winners.
That there will be no big winners. There will be some winners, but
There'll be some winners.
there won't be no big winners.
And there will be some losers, and there will be some people that stay about the same.
That's correct. Yep.
And that's why you have that 8-year adjustment every 8 years,
Right.
is to equalize value to the tax amount. But, you know, however y'all want to proceed, we'll proceed.
let me ask one more thing.
And again, yeah,
Do a lot more doing, move on.
I don't have a vote, you know, on what the rate's gonna be, or what you cut or not cut.
But you got a bigger part than anybody in here. You got to put it together.
Yeah.
Well,
That don't
I
matter
can
what
tell
tax.
you, whether you cut $1 million this year or don't cut $1 million next year, if we come back next year with a 10 or 12% reduction in values, and you keep the same tax rate at 67 cents, the only way to balance that budget is to cut education spending, cut spending for other services that are now like EMS or Sheriff's Department, or cut positions in different departments, like y'all had to do a few years ago. I know you had to do it when the Great Recession started.
Well, have we evaluated every position? Do we have a position in the county that we could do without? Do we have employees that are past retirement that maybe we could do without?
I'm sure we do. I'm sure we do.
Well, that's the kind of thing we talking about then.
Yeah.
Well, on that instance, you,
In other words.
I don't have an instant.
no,
That's
no,
not
I'm not, I don't mean for that question though.
Right.
It's hard to make somebody retire if they don't want to retire unless you can negotiate.
See, that's insane to me. You mean if we got a guy here that we don't need, and he's already got his retirement in, government can't tell him he needs to retire and be legal?
No.
You
You can offer him a package, but he don't have to take it.
No, you
As long as they're
can't.
doing the job.
Well, that's why we can't balance this budget because of rules like that.
If they're not performing, if there's some
Sure,
other
we can
reason.
get rid of them
The
then.
question is
But they're
if they're
performing
not
their
needed.
job.
You can RIF somebody if it's a position that's not needed, but you can't then replace
Rehire.
that position.
Well, you gotta understand, you know, I'm way the other way because 6 years ago, we had 74 employees and we had to get down to 20. And private sector can do that, but it was driven by income. We had no choice. I mean, I let 25-year employees go, but I didn't have no choice. Was it easy? Absolutely not. It wasn't easy. And Unfortunately, several of them are ill with us today because of it, but we just had no choice, and that's the way I had to think, and it's hard for me to think the other way.
Well, here's one way of doing it. I've seen it done this way. You can advertise among your employees that we have this plan here where you can retire early, call early
And actually,
retirement.
that's what we did, Mr. Chairman. We
Early
bought them
retire-
out of it. so we let
Incentive,
them-
an incentive to
That's what
retire
it-
plan.
And send it
Money gotta come
to
somewhere.
retire.
For instance.
And they may have skills. I know when I was working, we were always offered that, and some took it. They took it because they could go on and set up a business of their own as a consultant or whatever, many things. So we could look at it from that standpoint, but
And I have
but
experience.
I don't, like the attorney was saying, that you don't want to get into a situation of discrimination where you can be charged with
Of course not.
discrimination.
One time,
Ms. Wilson just brought up a good point that we all know about, that Edgecombe some 3 years ago,
Right.
went through some exercise, I don't know what it was.
they
but
offer it to
reduced-
all employees.
Okay, but they
Yeah,
reduced
but
the
that's
workforce by,
what-
if
that's
I
what you
remember
have
right,
to do.
27 employees.
I think they had, your number might be right, I remember at least 15 that
Mhm.
took.
But that doesn't mean they didn't replace those
Right.
positions. They
With lower
replaced
paid
them at
people.
lower paid.
But they
I
still
think
Salary.
they did
save
leave a
money.
few open that they could.
But what you do then, if you
replace.
take the
you're
same
saving.
position and get it out of the top of the bracket and start it back over at the bottom of the bracket,
Yes.
we have to do that all the time in private.
Or sometimes you don't need to replace the
Yeah.
position that you
Yeah.
fill.
Mhm.
I mean, that you take the,
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes you don't.
and I have in the past, our health department merged with a regional health, and I negotiate, instead of putting that director somewhere else in government, or the new health department didn't have a place for him, I negotiated a one-time payment to get that person out. So, yeah, there's, you can do that, but it has to be voluntary, signed agreement.
We got to follow the law, we all know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or change the law, one and two, that's two options we got.
Let me ask you one more question while you're going now. Are we gonna let the state government give us all the rules and what we can do and what we can't do?
In North Carolina,
Right.
we can only do what the
We
state
don't have
tells
any
us
choice.
we can do.
Exactly. That's poor business.
Right.
We're a modified Dillon rule
Got to
state.
change the rule, yeah.
But we have to get authority from the state in order to do anything. We can't fund recreation unless the General Assembly says counties may fund education, or recreation. So,
Well, we seem to be at an impasse again and hung up on philosophies again. What are we gonna do? What's the next move?
well, I
We
would
got
say,
about
again, we're
3
talking
more
about
hours to work on this today.
the base budget, but I would say before we start cutting the base budget, of these recurring things that,
Right.
non-capital, we decide which ones we want to go forward or which ones we want to put off to a future budget.
The compromise of that is we can go through this list and we can rank them. We can't spend no money until we know we got money. And I think I hear the board seems like they're saying something for COLA may be, well, the top thing on the list, I don't know.
And
I can't decide on any of them until the revenue's there and identified. We can work back through this list again and try to rank them, I guess. But I done talked so much this morning, I just need to be quiet. What we gonna do, guys?
when you say the $1 million, my concern with the $1 million, taking it off the fund balance appropriated and using that as the balance and figure is other revenues might have naturally increased a little bit. So you've got your spending, you've got your revenues, and you've got your fund balance appropriated. And they're all intertwined. One doesn't control the others necessary, or solely control. Again, if we identified 89 million this year in revenues, next year that might be 89.5, just naturally, forgetting about any expansion from the new sales tax. But because of the increasing tax base of the county under the old values, whether ambulance fees, a couple months ago, we increased a certain fee that we were able to get reimbursement from for ambulance services that we hadn't been getting. And that was thought to be about 20,000 a month. So,
See, all this board can tell you there is, give us the revenue projection based on the way
Use the
we
formula
did it
you've been
last year.
using.
and that's what we'll do.
Your 2 years here, if you
That-
want to use your 2 years here, project them like
Do it
that,
like you've been
and that's the
doing.
number we gonna take and use. We just ask you,
But if I give you that number and it's 91 million,
Mhm.
or I give you that number and it's 90 million, does that affect how much you cut from the base budget?
You would have to, because that's.
if
everybody
you
got
say the
spent.
revenue has gone up, sure, I mean,
Okay.
it's gonna be in the equation, we're not gonna kick that to the side.
Okay,
But we beg you to do it like you've been doing it, I mean.
and we are.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
don't try to work out of the problem by increasing revenues that, in a way that you didn't do it this year.
And I'm not. My point is, if we're increasing revenues naturally, $500,000, and you want to make the fund balance appropriated $1 million less, then that only leaves $500,000 you've got to cut
I
elsewhere.
agree with that.
Okay.
Are we still talking about Nash County people because they want to pay all the bills now?
I know.
You can't come out nowhere, back in the wall, or you can't get it out of another place. So Nash County
Not
people
if
feed
you
this
go
thing, they feed
pay
you,
with
me, and
bread.
everybody else up here.
I mean, you gonna
And you
take
can't take him out all out, you can't do it.
from the receipts and
He's
stuff.
not, you're not just talking about mental health though, are you? Right.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Okay,
all
okay.
outside agencies.
But on mental health, we gotta be careful because I think this board is position is we might not send it to each form.
But we'll still use the same amount.
We may well just send it to the agency direct.
Yeah, because they don't,
178 this year.
yeah, we can use what, because they don't use all what we.
That's right.
If we could get an idea, I'll call
170 something.
Well,
What we
they,
voted.
yeah,
And that would help. So we
Well,
have a number.
we don't get back what they don't use.
Right, they keep it and throw it into a big fund balance.
Right.
All
But
right.
if we get
And sometimes fund
Making a lot
balance,
of good progress, really, actually, I do.
yeah, this is interesting.
I like the idea of.
Can you
looking
say it
at-
without that green?
Of looking at some incentive to the employees where maybe some may want to retire and could retire and would retire. Then you could replace those people possibly at a lower, beginning of the
I think
salary
that's
structure.
definitely got to
That's
be
a
a
great
different
idea.
side to look at.
We gotta get creative.
Yeah.
Find a man, make a market, I don't care what.
It's a good idea. I know, when I was working with the Cooperative Extension Service, and when their budgets by the General Assembly were being cut, they started offering incentives for people to, what's called early retirement. And even had some suggestions based on their skills that maybe they could start a business of their own or be a consultant. And quite a few took, yeah, quite a few took that advantage and took their, especially those that had 25 years in, they went on and took it.
And look, you don't have to limit yourself to $1 million if you find $1 million, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I know.
Be
That's
okay.
what I'm thinking.
He did.
We could just get
That,
creative.
the retirement incentive,
Innovative.
That's fine.
I mean, that's something you can do every year, or something you can do
Oh,
this
sure,
year, or
yeah,
something you can do
yeah,
next year.
Did it every year.
Something you can do in January, in anticipation of the revow. We can do whatever y'all want us to do.
That's a great idea.
You
It's
give the man
probably-
to do what you need to do.
No, you don't want to give me that.
Yeah, you do.
Might
What
actually
you
be
need, I
something
said,
you
what
could look
need now,
at to
what
actually
can
roll
be.
out for next year.
Yeah.
Do what you gotta do this year, what you can do, and that might be something you could roll out for next year in anticipation of additional cuts that we would need. That'd give you time to develop what you want to do and just a thought. Lunch is here.
Yeah, well, we're, I don't need to say anything.
Go ahead.
Lunch break.
No, I mean, it's,
Mr. Chairman.
we'll do whatever y'all want to do. We can go through these again, we can go through the base budget.
You won't never get through these.
We can bring y'all a budget on May the, what is it, 4th, 5th? And y'all can chop it up and cut it and do anything you want to.
Well, to me,
Oh, that's what we're gonna do today.
Mr. Lamb, I think you understand what we're hoping to get out of this. Now, I don't have a problem in the world sitting here going through all this stuff, but I just feel like I'm woefully under-knowledged to be able to do that. I think that's staff. I mean, you know where there might be money there, or the department head does shortly. Certainly they know. Our time probably needs to be, and Wayne, you may disagree with this, and that's a great conviction. I think our time probably better spent on letting y'all do this to find what money you can free up, and then let's go through here and see what the board's position is gonna be on this expansion budget.
I agree
item.
100%.
Go ahead and prioritize those
Prioritize
items.
the
I
expansion.
agree.
I mean, that's what we can accomplish today.
Yeah, I agree, I
Okay.
agree, absolutely.
But, yeah, and I know y'all done it, and there's nobody here that don't think that we got a great staff, great employees, and we've been extremely thrifty, but we got a change conditions coming.
We'll-
That
we'll-
as
we'll-
an elected official, our taxpayers expect us to address it.
If y'all can go through the expansion, then we will make a good faith effort to
Okay.
go back through the base budget.
Okay. I think that's what we need to do after lunch.
The expansion.
No, but
We
you
need to
can
prioritize it.
No, we did it.
Just make priorities.
Prioritize the
Yeah.
discretionary.
So actually what you all would do, would go back through basically what you already have, and what we suggested that we can take out, what we can leave, and
Right. What we need now is, last year, we appropriated 2.8 million from fund balance for recurring costs. Hoping that we won't need it because revenues will be higher and expenditures will be less. And then we appropriated 734 from fund balance for one-time capital needs. So what we need y'all to do is, these recurring costs, which ones the majority of you may want in the budget, and the one-time capital costs, which ones the majority of you want in the budget. And then we can figure out what that total one-time capital cost is. We can appropriate that from fund balance. Then we can try to put in an amount close to $1 million less needed from fund balance. Yeah.
I think that's exactly
That's
what
right.
will keep us moving.
Call it penny plane.
What can Nash County people
Don't call it
afford?
that.
Well, you know, my nickname when I was a commissioner was the Vegematic Man.
see,
I sliced, I diced.
But I still
Fast
would
and
want
you die.
included
There
in
you
there.
go.
How about this,
Dramatic.
how about the scent plan?
I still would want included in there that COLA and the,
COLA would be probably the top priority
yeah,
on the
that's gotta
expansion
go in
list.
there. 'Cause
Okay.
What
Penalize
percentage?
the employees.
You
Yeah,
ready to do that?
employees.
Go back through this
Half.
and y'all vote on which ones you want to do, which ones you don't want to do.
I'm asking.
Well, let's see, do you have lunch
1.5.
prepared for us?
We do.
Well, it is now 10 after 12. Let's
Okay.
break for lunch and then come back.